Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Naruto Became a Cyber Demon Part 12. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
The Strata storage facility's numerous crates and freight containers would normally provide excellent cover, but for Raiden at that specific moment, they might as well have been made of paper match given the weapon he was holding down. The gun let off a round that utterly crushed the sturdy metal shipping cases, sending fragments flying everywhere, along with a terrifying whine as it charged. Furthermore, Fortune wasn't even aiming at Raiden in the first place. How is she going to use that thing and not die? As Raiden attempted to gain an advantage over Fortune, he said to himself. Not that she was attempting to duck for cover. She was standing right in front of the elevator, which was his only exit, barring a change of heart and going back to the deep-sea dock. However, that would only result in him being surrounded. But he could count on one thing. The amount of time it took her to fire one after the other. You mean that thing outside on the bridge was real? Raiden asked, popping up from where he was hiding and taking aim with his USP. The bullets appeared to be dead on, but they ended up veering off course. His shots revealed where he was, and Fortune pointed directly at him. She charged her railgun, then fired another shot that broke the forklift apart. With a timely dive, Raiden was able to avoid it, but the near miss left his legs with burn marks. Fortune asked, "What good are you?" as she saw Raiden dive and was ready to shoot him again. "Put me out of my misery now." "Perhaps I could if you weren't invincible." It's dangerous and volatile shot that brought down parts of the ceiling on top of me, Raiden thought to himself as he ducked down and covered his head. She's barely even fighting, she thought as she fired off a series of quick shots, barely charging her gun before unleashing another destructive torrent that tore through everything in her line of sight. She wasn't, either. She didn't use any technique at all. She was unharmed by bullets or explosives, and she carried a large gun. That was her fighting style in its entirety. The electromagnetic discharge from the gun alone would have torn his insides apart if he was even brave enough to approach. That in and of itself begged the question of how she could use it and survive, given the way she was shooting. Barrels of fuel leaked and caught fire as a result of the electricity that shot from Fortune's railgun. Raiden had no choice but to flee and hide, but eventually he had to take decisive action. It was probably not a problem that she was firing, as if ammunition wasn't a problem, and before long it would just be her and him, with nothing between them to prevent her from going missing. To attract Fortune's fire, Raiden picked up a piece of debris and hurled it outside and into the air. He took advantage of the fact that it worked and fired almost the whole clip of his gun in her direction. Nothing made contact. Then she blasted at Raiden once more, mockingly saying, "That went nowhere." Everything in sight was destroyed by a string of blasts. He resembled a rat. He would hide somewhere else when she destroyed a piece of cover, looking for something strong enough to use as a weapon. Not a possibility. It had only taken a few minutes to completely destroy the entire location. Fortune's repeated shots created a cloud of smoke that was impossible to get out of. However, it made visibility in the space almost non-existent. Sneering, she accepted that she would have to wait for movement or for the smoke to clear before doing anything. Her shooting had never been particularly selective before, but it was wasteful and downright stupid to shoot in complete darkness. When the gunfire stopped, Raiden was flat on his stomach, unable to move a muscle. The filthy air filled his lungs, but he dared not cough or do anything. He had to reflect. How was he going to beat her, for crying out loud? Everything was gone, save for the last few empty crates. There was oil all over the ground, and if he didn't get out of there, the oil would soon catch fire and take him with it. Then the elevator behind Fortune opened, revealing Vamp in his trench coat with the earlier scars on his chest visible. As though things were not bad enough. At this point, hiding would be useless. While Fortune continued to aim, Vamp stood next to her and said, "I'll take over Queen. It seems our friend Fatman is out of control." He was attempting to see through the smoke. Fortune asked, "He'll actually try to destroy the place?" Okay, he could die if he was that much of a fool. Now that it was obvious Raiden lacked the necessary skills to kill her, she wasn't all that interested in him anyway. There remained the rapture to discover. After all, he killed Old Boy. Why would he do such a thing? One may ask. Who knows, but this could unravel everything we've planned. Vamp was shaking his head in despair. He's nothing more than a stereotypical mad bomber now. He's completely lost sight of our ideals, and with it his loyalty to Commander Jackson. That was the tipping point, and Fortune only needed to hear it to get motivated to get rid of Fatman. Fine. I'll take care of the wayward soul. She put her gun down and turned off the power to it. It wasn't him anyway. I expected more of this one really. Completely useless, she said, no longer feeling any loyalty to her late husband. Vamp laughed at Fortune's almost infantile disdain for fighting someone who couldn't kill her and bring about her demise, saying, "Then he's all mine. I'll see you later, Queen." Fortune nodded, turned around, and made her way to the elevator. Now, Raiden leapt from his belly and shot 5 times at Fortune, who was not paying attention. The first shot veered off course, so she turned around. However, the 4th shot deflected away from her and hit Vamp in the liver, causing the man to gasp in pain. The 5th deflected shot went straight through Vamp's forehead. Before he could hit the ground, Fortune caught him as his eyes rolled back in his head. Raiden kept firing at her, effectually failing each time, but she ignored him, setting Vamp down on the ground and kneeling down beside him. As he ran out of ammunition in the clip, Raiden muttered, "Damn it. All for nothing, though. How much clearer could you make the target you were shooting at? He ought to have killed her 12 times over already because it was so annoying." Fortune said in a quiet voice, "Vamp, no, are you gone?" When the severely injured man did not answer, it seemed to deepen her grief. "No. That death was meant for me. Why am I the only one that can't die?" she exclaimed, beginning to laugh uncontrollably at Vamp's fallen body as Raiden crept past her. "How long am I going to be cheated out of death? How long are you going to force me to live?" she asked. Raiden could see the tears streaming down her face from where he was moving, but he held his gun up just in case. He felt a little more secure, even though it wasn't like it would do anything in the end. As if she picked up that railgun again and tried dismantling him and he wouldn't end up dead. Luckily, Raiden left quickly because she didn't seem to care that Vamp was leaving. She was too preoccupied with her own dramatics. He rode the elevator back to the top of Strut A because it was his friend. His codec went off as he sat down in the corner, trying to calm himself while he waited for the slow elevator to move up. Raiden turned it on with a grumpy sigh. Yeah. After dealing with an unwinnable battle, who else would think it wise to give him a call? Of course, we're talking about the Colonel, the man who called with apparent lack of human decency or timing. It seemed like there was never enough. Raiden. Fat Man's contacted us directly. He placed a bomb directly on the heliport and asked specifically for you. He's killed off Peter, now he's after you. You have 5 minutes to reach the bomb and defuse it. Any backup? No, none. It appears he has a different agenda from the rest of Dead Cell. A distinct plan, huh? After listening to the Colonel, Raiden just stared at the gun he was holding. Not even 10 minutes had passed since he was made to listen to the terrible explosion that claimed the lives of Peter Stillman and possibly Iroquois Pliskin. And for what purpose? What was the point of it all, since it seemed that he was no longer even complying with Dead Cell? There was never enough. The Colonel ended his communication with Raiden because neither of them had anything further to say. However, one person was still silent because they had been listening and were a little worried or unsettled by Raiden's sudden quiet. Rose asked him, very concerned, "Jack, are you okay? And then, do you want to talk?" The young man with white hair initially remained silent and just stared at his gun, pointing to the empty cartridge he had used on Fortune. "I'll be fine. I don't want you to see me or hear me while I'm like this, Rose," he said, at least unintentionally eliminating Vamp. In response, she said, "If you're sure, Jack, if you want to talk, I'm always here. Don't leave me out." Her confidence seemed a little lacking. "Letting you in might be the most dangerous thing I could ever do," Raiden said, popping out his empty cartridge before slamming a new one in and cocking his USP in preparation for another fight. "Fine then. If Fat Man wants me, I won't keep him waiting." With that, the connection cut out as the elevator reached the surface and sunlight touched his face again. How could he refuse the bastard his wish to end his life through Raiden? When Fortune returned to the deep-sea dock, he wept over Vamp's lifeless body until his eyes unexpectedly snapped open. A cold mist of breath left him, and he could feel and hear Fortune weeping for him. Fortune was left with no choice but to give the seemingly undead Romanian man a tight embrace in return. "There's no need for sorrow, Queen," he said, startling her out of her tears. "I died once already. I can't die twice." 2 super soldiers who didn't seem to be killed. Shell 2 rooftop core. Sniper Wolf did nothing more than perch on her now demolished perch atop the mini vats intended to pump chemicals into Shell 2's operations. She was momentarily shaken up by the blast, but not enough to prevent her from doing what she needed to do to assist someone. Everything was fine because the place remained stable and intact. She could see that her assistance had been effective when a trembling hand slipped over the edge of the roof and pulled someone up onto it. "Long time no see, Lil Proby," she said with a sly smile. "I saw all of that, by the way. Very impressive. I didn't know humans could jump off of falling debris like that. As Naruto pulled himself up over the edge of the roof and lay flat on his back, staring up at the sky, he sarcastically said, "Yeah, don't worry about helping me up. I've got it." He didn't sound out of breath even though his chest was heaving rapidly. "It's not like I just dodged collapsing death or anything," he said. Wolf got up from where she had been sitting and said, "Sorry, I deal in a particular set of skills. Manual labor is not included in that set." She then turned to face the Shell 1 and Shell 2 bridge, which at that point was a complete and utter hanging scrap, and said, "Well, it was blocked. And now it was not, since Shell 2's struts G and H were destroyed and were now a part of the tainted water below." As soon as she had a clear enough view to see that the bridge was collapsing, she called the frequency that Meryl had given her on her radio. The frequency of Naruto. It had some similarities to a video game. When she gave Naruto an instruction, he followed it without missing a beat. That he still trusted her enough to listen to her without giving her a second's notice to talk beforehand was a good sign. It appeared that he could still take orders well. That was his only means of exiting the bridge before he plummeted into the water. With the sense that, for once, she held Naruto's life in her hands rather than the other way around, Sniper Wolf wasn't being conceited at all. Nevertheless, good things come to an end, and he managed to survive by clambering up the side of the Shell 2 core structure. Despite being the largest and most stable building in the shell, it was pretty bad up there because part of it was caught in the blast from Fat Man's bomb. Naruto would not discuss the reason behind Wolf's decision not to shoot the cyborg ninja, but it was likely due to the possibility that it would either shoot the ninja and cause them to fall into the water, or it would watch over him and lead him across the collapsing bridge, thereby avoiding the possibility of allowing the ninja to escape. Thank goodness she chose the one that saved him from plunging 150 feet into poisonous water. "What was with that damn ninja?" he asked. As Wolf sat down on the ground beside Naruto, who was lying on his back, she said, "I wish I could tell you. So tell me how much you know about this fine mess you've wormed your way into." "What do you want to know that I know?" Naruto inquired, taking a moment to catch his breath. "About the fact that Olga's mission, whatever it is supposed to happen here. About the fact that this place is just a front for a new Metal Gear. Stop me when I've hit one. I wish I knew what the endgame for all of this was though, but isn't that what makes this fun?" he concluded sardonically. Yes, in fact. Wolf could now see Naruto up close, and aside from the 2 gunshot wounds in his chest caused by Old Boy, his outfit was still immaculate. However, they were not strong enough to pass. Nevertheless, it was not his gear that drew her interest, it was his countenance. He appeared to be 5 years older than he actually was. Not the stains on his cheeks, but even the disheveled blonde whiskers following the contour of his jawline caught her attention. The sapphire flecks in his eyes were still there, but they appeared duller now, as if the light was dwindling. Her adorable little Proby, oh, what had happened to him in the world? "You look so tired." Sniper Wolf replied with a snort of his mouth. "No, I mean it. When is enough going to be enough for you? What is the point? The tanker incident was the equivalent of the Patriots giving you your walking papers. You could have scattered to the 4 winds and never come back." Upon heaving a deep breath, Naruto conceded, "Not a chance. Until I think that all of my friends and family are safe from things like what happened to me. When I think they're safe from things like what happened to Olga, he can't let it stand as it is." Ironically, the only way he could accomplish that would be by taking down the Patriots. "I wouldn't die for this country, but I would for all of you. I just want to focus on the things that I care about. The things that I think I can save." "You can't save everyone. Why the hell can't I just try?" They looked at each other. Naruto appeared relaxed and lazy when lying on his back, but there was something different in his eyes. Even more merciless than the vast ocean encircling Big Shell. However, Wolf's eyes told the story of someone who was already aware of better. He eventually said to his former boss, "I know what it sounds like, but is it really that bad to want to try? I'm greedy when it comes to all of you. I don't want to lose a single one of you. What if you don't have the choice to?" Wolf responded with the appearance of a grim and lifeless grin. "I had comrades in Foxhound Little Proby, remember? Comrades that shared a particular goal. We all failed at Shadow Moses and now the only ones remaining from that scheme are Ocelot and myself. Liquid Snake, Vulcan Raven, Decoy Octopus, Psycho Mantis, they all died that day 4 years ago. My point is that somehow certain things are beyond you and there's nothing that you can do." Telling me to leave, Wolf? No, I am merely saying that just in case things do not end well, it isn't your fault. With a simple grunt, Naruto returned his attention to the sky. There was no need to consider anything like that. For 10 minutes. After 10 minutes of catching his breath, he would move on. To protect his eyes from the sun, he closed them and pondered, I haven't thought of a way to stop all of this without ruining the world too. Core 2 Shell, Fat Man's bomb caused enormous damage to Shell 2, resulting in the loss of struts G and H. Additionally, the bridge linking Shells 1 and 2 was completely destroyed, leaving the two Gurlukovich mercenaries sections separated between the two sections of the massive Big Shell. After Old Boy's death, Meryl regained control over Shell 2's security, at least until Olga managed to get there from Shell 1 following her meeting with the potential uprising leader. I wish she would have put me in charge of the Arsenal Tengu, but that's supposed to be closely connected to the Metal Gear project here, so I can see why she didn't, Meryl mused to herself as she strolled through the hallways. What a waste of a break. But she could wait until Olga finished in a few more hours. She would not, however, battle Naruto. She didn't care what would happen if he was found out, she would not interact with him. It wasn't her plan. Her friendship and loyalty to Olga were the only things that kept her there. Even though Naruto hadn't seen it, it was obvious that she had engaged in combat and killed Old Boy. He was the only one who would have taken the grumpy old stickler into combat, and everyone was aware of his passing. And what was left of the Fallschirmjäger after Dead Cell's liquidation 6 months earlier was destroyed. Nothing else could ever make Old Boy act in such a careless and rash manner. The secret was revealed to the select few who were aware of it. It was Naruto, or Rapture. Additionally, Fat Man was provoking his small playmate into setting up a trap on the heliport. He had a bomb there that he would blow up if anyone else went near it. The bomber is stupid. Why did so many competent soldiers double as psychotic jerks? She grabbed her radio, but as she was about to send out a patrol to investigate the remaining areas of Shell 2, a hand grabbed her arm firmly. Suddenly turning to face an open doorway, she saw that Chinaman was the one who had grabbed hold of her. She could see the rage on his face through his trench coat, long dark braid, mustache, and long dragon tattoo that ran down his face when she asked, "What do you want?" Chinaman growled sourly, "Shut up, girl." Was that a writhing tattoo on his face she just saw? That was unthinkable and hideous. Old Boy dies, but you survive. How convenient that Rapture did not kill you. How convenient that he waited until Old Boy traded shifts with you to make his presence known. You and he are old war buddies from Shadow Moses, correct? She practically choked on her words as Chinaman used one hand to grab her around the neck and applied his knowledge of Kung Fu to paralyze her free arm from the shoulder down. That doesn't mean I know where Naruto. She gritted out, "Let go of me, you bastard," realizing she couldn't shoot her way out of this one. If it weren't for the sound of an AN-94 getting ready to fire behind him, Chinaman would have continued to glare at her with hatred, saying, "Don't lie to my face, girl. I can sense in your Kai that you are. I'll break your neck. You have a death wish, boy?" he asked, turning around to see what he assumed to be a regular Gurlukovich mercenary with a mask brandishing a gun. At the sound of the mercenary's American accent, Chinaman sneered at him and roughly released Meryl before walking away. "I'm not the best soldier in the world. I'm not even nearly as good as Meryl. And I don't have freaky abilities like the rest of you in Dead Cell, but with the gun already at your back, does it matter?" Chinaman said. Chinaman turned to face the other person in the hallway and said, "And the next time you try to hold someone up, boy, make sure that your knees aren't knocking together hard enough for your captive to hear it." He didn't even bother to look at them as he left. "Woman, you had better tell Rapture that if he has even the slightest bit of compunction, of self-respect or honor at all, he will face me at the sight of his betrayal of Dead Cell. If he is not brain dead as we always figured, he should know what I mean." Meryl just glared at Chinaman, restraining herself from pulling out a Desert Eagle to find out exactly what made him so damn special. However, when she noticed that Johnny's legs were actually trembling, she softened her gaze and said, "Thanks, Johnny," rubbing the shoulder that Chinaman had momentarily paralyzed. Before his stomach began to turn, Johnny replied, "No problem," giving her a grin behind his balaclava. I don't know what I would have done if I actually had to fight that guy. He would have ripped me apart. It wasn't important whether he would have prevailed or not. Well, that was very brave of you anyway. What mattered was that he had taken action in the first place. Although foolish and awkward, Johnny was a decent man. But he doesn't want to fight either of us. What should we do? Meryl simply threw her radio into her hand and looked directly at Johnny. "You're gonna give him what he wants?" he asked, a little surprised. "Boss is here looking for Miss Olga. He doesn't have time to fight with his old unit." Johnny continued, knowing she was going to say something along these lines. What if it's what Naruto wants though? Meryl pondered. He didn't have to face off with Old Boy the way he did. He did that by choice. He didn't even have to come here to begin with. He had to know if Olga was going to be here and we were going to be here, that Dead Cell was probably here too. Maybe Naruto had had enough of dodging everything and running. Steer clear of the Patriots, stay away from any trouble he might cause his family, and stay away from the conflict he had unintentionally sparked against his former Dead Cell allies. He wanted to fight, so he did with Old Boy. Perhaps there was some dark urge to confront the unit he had left on the shakiest of terms. Maybe he thought that a piece of this terrorist scheme was something he had unintentionally created? Meryl, however, quickly put an end to that train of thought and put her radio back on her belt. No. That's self-destructive, she shook her head. God knows I don't need to be stirring up more among our friends. So what about Chinaman? Johnny queried as he walked with Meryl back down the hall. He's going to be waiting for Boss at that spot. The place he said was the site of his betrayal to Dead Cell. I don't know. I'll think of something. You'll understand eventually, but you're all still young, the woman said, pointing to an odd cardboard box sitting in the center of the open storage room door as they passed. It's necessary to sometimes confront your past. Snake's system took a hit when he saw Meryl, but he recognized the man with the stomach virus from his time in Shadow Moses. Naturally, he recalled that Naruto had ties to the Gurlukovich mercenary system, having shared this information as a gesture of good faith when they had first begun cooperating. He had been given names as a sign of his good faith, and after hearing them, it was evident that this was the case. Even though they appeared to be acting in his best interests, avoiding his main problem in this particular case would not result in a solution. If anything, Naruto was the only one with the authority to decide for himself whether or not he wanted to battle his former squad. Snake would have spoken to him about it if they hadn't planned to. With Raiden, heliport, Shell 1 Strut E. When Raiden arrived at the top of the heliport, his expression was solemn and unamused. He noted that the Harrier that had been there had vanished, but given the enormous crane that hung over the entire structure, he didn't rule out Fat Man moving something similar for his own purposes. Although he wasn't a pilot, he was a bomber, so it's possible that he used his bomb as a trap and fled. In any case, he resisted the impulse to kick the one and only C4 package that was lying on the ground in the center of the H on the pad. Before his time ran out, he simply used the same old spray can and frozen it over. He then turned around and walked back around the area surrounding the heliport after hearing the sound of rollerblades. Raiden didn't say anything, he just held up his USP and aimed it around the machinery and shelves scattered about the outside of the heliport. I am Fat Man. The greatest humanity has to offer, and the lowest. You're right on time, I see. I like a punctual man. Raiden nodded, all right, with the lowest part, at least. As he skated around the heliport, Fat Man said, can you hear it? Hear this rhythm? As the sound of a clock ticking louder approached, Raiden could see him coasting from one object to another, hiding his movements and saying, it's the rhythm of time, and life. Don't you love that sound? I used to hang around department store clock counters just to hear it. Either bravely or foolishly, Fat Man stopped right in front of Raiden. The man was large and had a bald head that appeared to have been burned at some point. He was wearing an olive trench coat over a blast suit with a high collar. He held a cocktail drink in almost womanly hands. Let's toast to Stillman, shall we? Fat Man mockingly said as he started to do just that. Life is short, he continued, speaking almost whimsically. Bombs tell the time with every moment of their existence, and nothing else announces its own end with such fanfare. Glad you could make it, the party's about to start. If you destroy the big shell you'll never collect any kind of ransom, Raiden stated. He needed to make sure there were no more hidden bombs in the facility before he could just shoot the man. Ransom? Fat Man asked, clearly not understanding what Raiden was talking about. What are you talking about, a ransom? To his dismay and bewilderment, Fat Man just started laughing at Raiden, who was not in the mood to be screwed with at the moment. $30 billion in cash. That's the point of this whole thing. So that's what's going on, huh? He exclaimed, laughing even as he saw his young opponent becoming angrier. Oh, you'll know soon enough, and I couldn't care less what they plan to do. My ambitions are much more simple, to be the most famous bomber of all time. I'll go down in history. I felt like he was the only one laughing at this joke. You're nuts. Raiden yelled in the open air. No one's going to give a damn about you after I kill you. You're not even going to get an unmarked grave. They'll drop you into the ocean for the sharks and that's it. That chance is the only reason I chose to assist them, Fat Man declared, taking another gulp of his drink. I'll be remembered as the man who beat Peter Stillman. Raiden became even more enraged upon hearing that bastard speak negatively about someone who had come to save other people's lives. Like hell you beat Stillman. He had your damn number. Fat Man angrily shook his now empty glass, saying, you have nothing of his courage or. That croc was a dead man even back 6 months ago. Only ones with the right stuff could survive the hell that we went through. The liquidation of Dead Cell. Call it what you want to. Fat Man replied with a sigh. It set me free though. Opened the way to a new dimension. I'm not stuck by orders and restrictions any longer. Now I'm free to become the emperor amongst detonation devotees. You're a common criminal and that's the only way anyone's ever going to remember you. That's why I dislike boorish military types. So this is how the game will work, boy. I'll plant a bomb, and it'll explode soon after. If you want to stay in one piece you'll have to do something about it. Now laugh and grow fat. Fat Man yelled at the insolent young man, tossing his glass to the ground in exasperation and skating off out of Raiden's sight once more. First and foremost, Raiden sprang to his right and ascended atop several sizable cases, whereupon he was able to observe Fat Man skating away at a remarkably rapid speed for a person of his size. After missing 3 shots at the spherical bomber, he realized that Fat Man had dropped a C4 package in the middle of his maneuver. Raiden leapt from his case to a shelf, then flipped to the ground, holding his gun in one hand and his spray can in the other as he neutralized the explosive with a spray. He was unwilling to take a chance on the amount of force that each of Fat Man's bombs could produce. He was stuck spraying his bomb when a darkly laughing Fat Man skated straight towards him. Fat Man's preferred weapon during his attempt to gun Raiden down was a Glock 18. "Faye. You should stick to bombs and not to shooting," he said, hitting the easily identifiable Fat Man twice in the torso but only managing to cause him to fall. "That suit is thick enough to protect him better than a vest would," he added. Fat Man laughed, because he was still alive, and slowly got back up. His bomb appeared to be successful because Raiden had to stop completely for a few seconds in order to deal with them. He could use that. "A good first round," Fat Man exclaimed as Raiden completed using the bomb and turned to shoot at him once more. "Let's raise the stakes, shall we?" he asked, moving again. Raiden let out a frustrated grunt and took off running, actually keeping pace with Fat Man and showcasing his speed as he ran alongside the man with crates between them. Raiden would attempt to hit him every time they went through an opening, but he was never able to time his shot accurately enough to hit his target. When Fat Man eventually passed him at one of these gaps and turned to face Raiden, Glock gestured to him and fired a furious laugh. Grasping his teeth and lowering his center of gravity, Raiden stopped and took a shot to the arm. Rather than being flattened by a 300-pound man riding a rollerblade, Raiden used Fat Man's own momentum to propel him into the air. Fat Man grunted and landed on his back, but he still managed a pained laugh as he tried to get back up on his feet. If it weren't for his cutting-edge suit, he might have suffered more serious injuries from the bullet wound in his arm. He thought to himself, "You've got to be kidding me. There's no way," when he heard a beeping sound and discovered that a C4 had been planted and firmly adhered to his ankle. As Fat Man rolled onto his round belly and fired his own shots at Raiden, he responded, "Yes way." Raiden had to worry about the gunfire at the moment, so he avoided it and decided to hide in order to solve his small explosive issue. "I told you already that I'm the Emperor of Explosives," he exclaimed as he climbed back onto his roller skates. Raiden had taken refuge atop a freight case, while Fat Man had been patting himself on the back and getting up to continue fighting. He repressed a cry of pain as he immediately froze the C4 on his leg while gripping the freezing spray in his hand. Even though his leg was temporarily screwed, he needed a fast fix because he didn't have time to remove it completely while fighting. "Are you okay, Jack? Can you keep fighting?" "I'm fine, I think. I mean, I might have given myself borderline frostbite, but I'm no medic or doctor. Not the smartest thing I've ever done, but hey, this kind of thing never came up in VR either." "Yoo-hoo. I've planted another bomb for you. 45 seconds to get rid of it or it'll get rid of you. Isn't this fun?" Raiden said to his girlfriend, and apparently to himself as well, "I'm so gonna kill this guy, Rose." He then got up and started looking for Fat Man once more. After locating the man, he attempted to shoot him twice but was unsuccessful. However, it accomplished his goal and drew him away from Fat Man's C4 placement. "Damn it, I slowed myself down," he said. "What a fool." Fat Man yelled as Raiden fell back to the ground beside his bomb. "Try aiming for a change." Raiden didn't defuse the bomb right away. Instead, he took out a claymore mine that he had secretly obtained earlier, when he was following Fat Man's explosives wild goose chase through Shell 1. Even though it was inconvenient for direct engagements, the procure on-site procedure had its uses because it allowed you to carry anything you thought would be useful and pick it up and use it. He made sure to conceal himself in a way that would make it difficult for Fat Man to pursue him and fire at him. He had demonstrated that he was a bad shooter and that he needed to be close to the target, and Raiden would have jumped all over that. As Raiden sprung Fat Man's own and started spraying the bomb, the counter trap was set. Suddenly, He heard skaters approaching and saw the large figure of the insane bomber approaching him, his Glock raised and firing while wearing a maniacal smile. After 3 shots with no hit, there was a slight click sound. Whack! Fat Man never saw it coming, and the blast threw him through the air while the shockwave and the shrapnel that pieced together his suit pushed it to its breaking point. After landing on his head, Raiden completed freezing the bomb and hurried over to Fat Man, who was still attempting to stand up. Not a chance, as Raiden hit the big man with shot after shot. He made an attempt to crawl away, thinking that his suit's resilience would hold, but it could only withstand so much before bullets began to rip into his skin. Raiden persisted in firing until Fat Man stopped crawling and turned to sit against a crate, his clothes soaking wet from the blood. "My suit," he muttered, "now I have nothing to wear to the party." Raiden said, holding up his gun cautiously in case there were any unpleasant surprises, "The party's over for you." Fat Man abruptly held up a small device, pressed a button, dropped it, and let it fall to the ground, saying, "That's what you think." Grabbing him by the neck right away, Raiden pressed his USP up against the man's bald head and said, "What was that? What did you just do?" Disregarding him, Fat Man turned to face the hand he had just used to turn on his gadget and said, "I have such beautiful hands. These delicate hands can craft works of art." Raiden swung his gun right in Fat Man's face, swatting away the conceited bomber's hands and demanding, "Answer me, what the hell is this?" Raiden kicked the trigger away and aimed his gun at it, preparing to shoot it. "It's the switch for the biggest bomb in the entire place," he said. "Once it's activated there's no stopping the count." "Where was it planted by you? What location is it?" "Somewhere in this area." Grinning, Fat Man teased, "Don't worry. It's very close by." Sensed Raiden's utter contempt for him, which made him laugh once more until the blood began to run from his mouth. "Go ahead and shoot me. I have already passed away. The big shell will be carried away by it when it explodes. But that's your issue right now, not mine," he said, closing his eyes. "Tell me where the bomb is located," Raiden asked, but he was unable to make any demands in this regard. "This is the party's high point. I say, bring it on." Even though his smile appeared to widen, he grew weaker and weaker, saying, "I die here. And start my legend. Regretfully, you won't be able to watch the films. Now laugh and get fat," he said, then went completely limp. Raiden pulled out his explosive sensor, finding it already going crazy with the only person who could tell him where the bomb was now dead. He could not see the active bomb that was right there in the immediate vicinity. As a last-ditch effort, he tore open Fat Man's enormous trench coat and discovered something terrifying. Explosives had been packed into various parts of Fat Man's suit the entire time he had been shooting at him. If those explosives had been active during the battle, the worst possible outcome could have occurred. Raiden swiftly sprayed the detonator device with his coolant spray, killing it instantly, without waiting another second. The Colonel and Rosemary had heard everything, including Raiden's sigh of relief. "Good work, Raiden." The Colonel informed him, "All of the bombs are neutralized." Raiden had to wait another second in case something else came out of left field at him, but nothing did, and he fell to his knees in exhaustion with a sigh. They no longer have their primary tool. That departs. Raiden reported, remembering that before they had even started fighting, Colonel, Fat Man didn't seem to know about the ransom demands. It was odd that one of the more well-known organizers of the day's events didn't know about something like that. I would say that it was purposely kept a secret. Compared to the other terrorists, he appeared to be coming from a very different place. That's over, so don't worry about it now. There are still numerous hostages and the president at risk. Pay attention to them. You haven't yet visited the central core of Shell 1. Try it over there. Just as Raiden opened his mouth to reply, his codec went off. "Oh, I have another call. Do you want me to accept it?" "I'll log off, sorry, it's best to hide our presence." The Colonel interrupted, but a different, well-known voice interrupted, asking, "How are you doing, kid?" Pliskin. Raiden didn't want to sound so excited to hear that he was alive, but he was certain that given the circumstances it was as manly as it could have possibly been. "Is everything alright? How did the explosion in Shell 2 escape you?" "It really could be better. It appears that I was absent for some time. However, I had a little assistance from a friend who made sure I was covered while Pete saved my ass. How about Fat Man?" With a mocking glance at the deceased man's corpse, Raiden declared, "Don't worry about him anymore. How's Shell 2? Struts H and G are screwed. How about the poisons?" "What?" The SEALs had to have been briefed on something that important. If Big Shell blows up, the explosion is expected to produce massive amounts of toxins. This was the biggest threat the terrorists possessed, so how could he have been unaware of it? "Never heard anything about that, but it looks like there's not much danger of that in any case. The central core of Shell 2 is starting to flood though. It's not going to be accessible for much longer at this rate. What about the president and the hostages? We need to get them out of here now. They weren't in Shell 2. They must be in Shell 1. It's too far to Manhattan for anyone not trained to do so to swim, and there aren't any lifeboats. That doesn't make any sense. Not a single lifeboat. 20 miles offshore, on a structure built right in the middle of the ocean, there are no lifeboats. What was wrong with this location? So a chopper is our only extraction? Right. And it comes with a passenger limit. Intel has it that there are about 30 hostages. It'd take more than a single trip. Can you even pilot a chopper? No, but I've got a gearhead with me. He's a good guy. I'll have to introduce you later. Now you go ahead and do your thing, I'll do mine. The president is at the top of our priority list, Pliskin. Your orders, not mine. Later. What? Raiden exclaimed in shock, but the discussion had already ended on the other end. Pliskin. Damn it. His second wind seizing, Raiden raced for the stairs to start walking across the enormous complex to the Shell 1 core, but before he knew it, a ninja materialized out of nowhere. With his gun aimed at it, he swore, saying, "Where have I seen something like this before?" As if he would have to fight it again. You mean my VR simulations of Shadow Moses? Yes, a cyborg ninja was present. Similar to the individual who had been Grey Fox. What was happening in this situation? From behind the helmet mask, the ninja said in a distorted voice, "You passed with flying colors." Raiden yelled, "Identify yourself." The sight took him aback a little, but not enough to make him unprepared. A sword was drawn and aimed at the ninja, who said, "I'm like you. I have no name." Raiden could see nothing during the brief flash of the mask's visor, so he said, "You can call me whatever you like." However, he had heard that voice before. On the open bridges between struts on the side of Shell 2, he had received a surprise call alerting him to the presence of a sniper that could have easily killed him. It kept him from being ambushed and told him that his detour was protected by booby traps and claymores, one of which helped him defeat Fat Man, Mr. X. The ninja, who appeared to be amused by him, replied, If you like," since the ninja had returned the sword to its sheath and said, "Come. Let's get out of the open. Follow me." It was sufficient to defuse the situation. "Are you with Foxhound too?" Raiden asked the ninja, warily following them as they descended the stairs and were under the heliport's shade from the sun. Even though they were facing each other, the ninja stopped walking and turned to face him, saying, "Neither enemy nor friend. Just a messenger from the Lililulilo." The ninja also tapped the side of the face mask to send out a signal to call Raiden on his codec, saying, "This is safer, I think. No eavesdroppers from the outside." "Yes, that makes sense. Why'd you contact me?" he asked, still unable to hear the ninja through the mask but able to hear through the codec. "I've been ordered to give you backup, including relaying necessary intel." The cyborg ninja asked, "Ordered by whom?" Without responding. "Why won't you identify yourself?" "There is no need for you to know. You are not trusted to make such decisions if you think that you do. I'll tell you something you do need to know instead. The current location of the president. Or rather, the current location of the man that knows where the president is." "Who?" "A secret service agent named Ames currently being held with the other hostages. The head of the president's security detail. Ames has been fitted with the same type of VIP nanomachine system as the president. If you're within range, you should be able to communicate." Raiden shook his head in disbelief and said, "There's no reason for me to believe any of this. You understand that, right? Why are you telling me this?" "I've already told you. And of course I understand that, but you also have no choice but to believe. Or do you have any other leads that I am unaware of? The hostages are all being held together with Ames in the first floor basement of the Shell 1 core, and it's more heavily guarded than any other section of the big shell. You have no chance of getting in unseen." "Fantastic. Even if he could win in the most heavily guarded section of the entire facility, starting a firefight around the hostages would be the worst possible idea in history." A uniform was hurled in Raiden's direction, ending his troubles with a question. "One of the terrorists?" "I suggest you hurry. They have the nuke on their side." "They have a nuke? You didn't find their continued presence here strange? Even with the president as a hostage, this is a man-made island. As big as it is, there is no visible means of escape available to them. And they have the codes from the president already, so don't go hanging your hat on that." "Fantastic. Why would they even bring that to a place like this?" asked the president, who was evidently carrying the briefcase, along with the man Vamp had earlier killed with half a handcuff. "Because the big shell is the farthest thing from a cleanup plant there is. Dead Cell didn't have to bring a nuke along with them. It was right here all along to begin with. Nothing in this affair is what it seems. A ruse? However, why? In partnership with Naruto. Oh, Naruto could try and be as silent as he wanted to be the entire time Catherine had been trying to talk to him now that things were calm. Sniper Wolf really is beautiful, Aniki. I can see why you did what you did with her. But does that mean you're a sucker for blondes like I wanted you to be after all? I wonder what she could tell me about how big you're, she said, aware that he could hear her. Before Catherine could finish pushing his buttons, Naruto interrupted her with an abrupt, "All right, that's enough of that." He could hear her laughing over the line. What became of his adorable little sister, who was 10 years old when she picked him out of a stream? He liked to point the finger at television, but he was probably mostly to blame as well. Of course, Wolf thought he was talking about his break when he said, "Yes, I would assume that it has been around 10 minutes after all. That's long enough for someone like you to catch their breath." Wolf had no idea that he had been in a one-sided codec conversation at the time. Yes. Returning to the workbench. Okay, tell me where Olga is, because I know you know. If anyone among his contacts knew Olga Gerlukovich's exact location right now, it would be the woman who had a bird's eye view of a large portion of the big shell. If nothing else, tell me a bit more about what's being built here. This was not the time to be hanging out with his gorgeous sniper of a mentor. Sniper Wolf gave the request a nod. He could hear her say, it was developed by the US Navy for whatever reasons the Patriots wanted it built for. I don't know why, I'm not privy to that much clearance. That's top of the food chain information. There is supposedly a substantial payload of nuclear warheads on board, and its size absolutely dwarfs anything you or I have ever seen before. If this entire facility was just a big cover for its development and construction, then that much had to be evident. That's really scary. If that's true, then God, that thing must be absolutely titanic. How do you destroy something like that? Naruto concurred. But there was a further problem at hand. How do you even use something like that? I had to wonder how anyone designed Rex to move it all back when I saw it, and you're telling me the new one is big enough for the entire big shell. Naruto gave Wolf a half-hearted glare as she spoke. It is an aquatic-based weapon, submersible. I would suggest that this is how it would manage to be mobile. I've never seen it though. Wolf responded, close your mouth, little proby, you'll catch flies in it. It sounded recognizable. It was not nearly as big as the freaking big shell, but it was similar to the foolish thing he was ordered to destroy 2 years ago, which was the origin of most of this mess. Even though Metal Gear Rex was larger than Metal Gear Ray, it could still be developed without requiring an entire facility the size of a residential island. Naruto began to stretch out in preparation for moving again. But you've never seen it? He asked. Who has? Wolf explained as she made the decision to get back on her scope and scan the area once more. Olga, our former president George Sears, and the Gerlukovich mercenaries carefully selected to be security for it. They're called Arsenal Tengu and are supposed to be outfitted with special equipment for their task. Until everything is prepared, no one else can see it. Not even Dead Cell members. To sum up, then, the Patriots set up Naruto and Snake 2 years ago by sinking a real oil tanker in place of the fictitious one they were on with Ray when it escaped. By persuading the public that the heroes from the Shadow Moses incident were terrorists, they not only tarnished the reputations of Naruto and Snake but also effectively eliminated them from contention. The pink slip that Naruto received from Dead Cell and the Patriots' devious manipulation. The goal was to erect a fictitious cleanup facility that would serve as a cover for the development of a completely new Metal Gear. Therefore, even after Big Shell's construction was finished, no one would question the continuous shipping of materials to the plant, and they could combine supplies for the new Metal Gear with those required to maintain the plant's front end. However, the tanker incident introduced a new Metal Gear in Metal Gear Ray. It vanished due to Ocelot's cunning actions, but they were already developing a more powerful and formidable one. Additionally, he believed that since cell phones were updated so frequently, they were no longer necessary. This was absurd, but far more dangerous. And now that it had been taken over, it was being readied for use by Naruto's attractive Russian ally, who had an entire army at her disposal, his old, insane unit, which was out for his blood and had no other purpose in life, and the former US president, who was furious and could take it no more. Aniki, Snake's trying to call you. You want to answer him? Yeah, Kitty, I'm putting him on through now. What do you want? Naruto said, placing his hand to his ear. 1 minute, Wolf. In his typically rough voice, Snake uttered the words, Chinaman, there's someone that wants to fight you. It was not even an issue of needing to consider it. He was eager to finally get even with Dead Cell, which was one of the reasons he leapt at the chance to infiltrate Big Shell. If nothing else, he owed Colonel Jackson that much to confront the group and ask, Where? One last time. The site of your ultimate betrayal to Dead Cell. Wherever that is. Meryl wanted to keep you from fighting him, saying that there's enough self-destructive crap going on around here, but it's your call, kid. With honesty, Naruto said, I appreciate it. Apart from his own best interests, he wasn't there to protect himself. Where are you going? Was his way of keeping his friends from capturing the nation's economic center while he was there to settle some scores. To get a ride out of here for the hostages. We're all going to need to meet back up soon. I caught up with Otakon already. Just don't get killed before we get a way out of here and find you. As Naruto walked to the edge of the Shell 2 core rooftop and peered out over most of the facility, he said, I'm pretty sure you'll know what's happening. So are you ready to meet more of my old unit, kitty? I won't be very hard to find. All I can do is sit on my hands and watch you from where you guys left me for support, so I guess I am. I'll run the program and check into any black budget projects that fit the bill here, but I'm telling you there hasn't been anything on large-scale weapon development like a Metal Gear since the last time we checked. It's busy work if nothing else, I guess. Right, you two do that. Good luck, kid. Wolf assumed Naruto had assistance from someone else for his mission as he observed him talking to himself, but when he perched precariously on the building's edge, she asked him, Little Proby, what are you doing? Naruto cryptically remarked, Man stuff, before slowly leaning forward and saying, Later, Wolf. Stay safe. He then fell off the roof, frightening her to death when she went to check on him. Her keen eyes caught the glint of metal ninja wires against the building's side, leading to their anchorage around a fluid tank, and she stopped. Wolf groaned out loud, I detest it when he does that, and went back to her regularly scheduled work as the eye in the sky. Naruto leapt beneath the struts and the cores of Big Shell, stopping his fall and severing his arm from the ninja wire attached to his suit's left arm. This allowed him to land softly on the somewhat murky water's surface inside the oil fence. He was aware of Chinaman's intended destination. The exact location where the tanker had been sunk in order to frame him was also the scene of his final betrayal of Dead Cell. Technically, he was correct, despite how unfair it was. Dead Cell would not have suffered consequences for his reputation as a loose cannon in the aftermath if Naruto had not gone to try and assist Olga in keeping her father out of Ocelot's schemes and plans. It was just the two of them down there, along with the shattered remnants of Strut G, Strut H, and the connecting bridge between Shell 1, Shell 2 floating above the water. There was no way that Wolf could have helped him, even if he had asked for it. She had no visibility down there. Nobody was able to. In the middle of the facility's waters, far from the oil fences, it was no man's land. Nothing, not even a single soul, would disturb them down there, which was the only reason this was the battleground. Because of their training backgrounds, both of them could walk on water, and they were hundreds of feet below any strut or core. Only them, the pillars, the debris, and the murky waters. Without worrying about being found out, Naruto yelled, Chinaman! Get your ass out of here, I know I'm down here, you racist git. You can sense me and you know it. A faint chant started to reverberate through the atmosphere, resembling a chant from a dreamlike place because of the Big Shell's complete reverberation. Naruto made his way effortlessly across the water, beyond the damaged core of Shell 2, and waited in the shadows. After some time, his perseverance paid off, and he turned to see Chinaman without his trench coat, revealing a plethora of sizable tattoos covering his entire body. The dragon tattoo that extended down his entire body from his face was the most noticeable of the tattoos, though many of them were Chinese symbols that Naruto was unable to read. The smell of this place makes me sick. Chinaman stated this while walking across the water with the same casualness as Naruto did. To me, this water isn't contaminated with oil, it's contaminated with your treachery. Naruto replied by glaring back at him, I've always hated this country, you know. I enjoyed being in Dead Cell, because our missions showed the superior, elitist American military just how inept and vulnerable they really were. And that's what this is to me. He grinned darkly. The Patriots believe that they are untouchable. They think their new superweapon will keep everything under their thumb, but what will they do when we take it and use it against them, and show them that just like their soldiers they are not as safe as they think they are? So what's the big scheme here? Naruto asked as he moved about in the water. You get the new Metal Gear and then what? What do you do then? You're stuck here. You don't have a chance. There's no way off of this rusty piece of shit except as a bloated corpse in the water. We have the upper hand here. Chinaman looked west toward New York City. When the time comes and our new Metal Gear is active, a nuke will be detonated high altitude above that accursed city. The EMP pulse will bring Wall Street to a screeching halt, and the Patriots will be brought to light by our actions today. The smoke and mirrors will be blown away and they will be forced to show themselves to prevent everything they've built from crashing down. Were they aware of the potential consequences of that? That was going to blow up all of New York City's electronics. Naruto began to say, "You're going to fuck the world's economy. Just to smoke these assholes out?" With a stunned expression on his face. More than that, probably the entire eastern seaboard and deep into North America, depending on how strong the nuclear weapon was. Extreme, wasn't it? There was no other way it could have ended. The country would be in serious trouble if Wall Street collapsed as it would. And the dominoes would only start to fall from there if the entire East Coast went dark for however long it was going to. He too wanted the Patriots dead, but this was a case of too much of a good thing. Politics and military-wise, he didn't really care about America, but this went beyond that. It was going to destroy the world and cause far too much harm to people. Being more of a fighter than an expert in economics, he wasn't the sharpest tool in the drawer, but some things didn't require much explanation. That's completely absurd. They're going to set the world back to zero for this. Everything commercial is going to go out. Even a lot of military things are going to get worked over. This country's going to be totally naked. The king wants to remake this wretched country into its proper image. Chinaman was referring to George Sears, the leader of this scheme, what it's supposed to be. What it tries to make itself out to be on the surface before people truly come here and are able to witness how rotten it is at its core. You cannot make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, of course. It's just a means to an even greater end. No, Naruto said, stepping back and shaking his head firmly. No, it's not worth it. Not even close. Do you have any idea what the hell this is going to do? Do you even care? You're going to start a goddamn world war. Every country, every crackpot terrorist organization in the world, they're all going to smell the blood in the water and they're going to jump on the scraps of this country like jackals on raw meat. A Metal Gear, no matter how kick-ass it is, isn't a big enough ace in the hole to stop that. There would be no way to fill a power vacuum the size that would result from detonating an EMP over the US East Coast without first requiring rivers of blood. Chinaman reassured Naruto, grinning at how nervous the plan of action was making him. That won't be our problem. The child's hair was likely rising from the back of his head. I can assure you that the Metal Gear is more than enough to ensure our safety. The leadership of the new America will be safe no matter what, and we'll be nowhere near the blast when we set it off. And even if it isn't, remember that I don't care. I hate this country as it is to begin with. It was almost comical. The people who had sworn to protect and defend America in the past appeared to be the only ones with the necessary expertise to carry out the plans of all the outsiders who wanted to destroy it. If it wasn't so depressing, it would have been humorous. Because this was what it meant to live beneath a secretive organization that ruled over everything. They, the American patriots, anyone would be compelled to respond in the most severe way imaginable if they were forced to spend so much time controlling and exploiting everyone until they had nothing more beneficial to offer. What was the purpose of everything? The silence between Naruto and Chinaman was broken by his deep breath. Saying all of this to someone that is about to die is liberating. It's like writing memoirs and then burying them so that no one can find them later. It's exciting. He then carefully slid into Shaolin Kung Fu, preparing himself for combat. Naruto was just staring at him until he decided to comply as well. You know, with all of the things that I've seen and had to deal with, there's only one man in this world whose advice I've ever listened to and keep heeding even now. He told me that there are only 2 rules. And every time things start getting out of hand or nothing seems right, I keep going back to what he told me. I hope that will give you some solace when you die by my hand, Chinaman said, curling his fingers into a palm strike before slamming his hand into the water. As soon as his hand hit the water, a path split open in front of Naruto, who leapt over it and slashed at Chinaman vertically while drawing his sword. When Chinaman allowed himself to be submerged under the sea and allowed Naruto to chop through the waves before emerging a short distance away, the attack failed. Your little ninja tricks won't work, Jap. You hold no advantage here. Chinaman replied with a grin, your abilities pale in comparison to my own as Dead Cell's mystic. Naruto shot back, whatever you say, jackass, and swiftly distributed shuriken to throw at the Chinaman, who dodged and swayed his way past them. The whole thing was just a ruse to buy Naruto enough time to start making clones and encircle Chinaman in a triangle, saying, I don't care about that. With the solar gun between the 3 of them, Naruto and his 2 clones quickly opened fire, aiming their right arms at Chinaman. Chinaman fell back under the water amid his laughter. It irritated me. Chinaman, a former swimmer for the Navy SEALs, held the record for the longest underwater period of time. It was a deadlock, though, because there was nothing much he could do from underneath. Nevertheless, Naruto didn't need this to become a chess match of any kind. He needed to meet with some people. Chinaman appeared to have no intention of stopping the fight altogether, as evidenced by the water explosion that killed one of Naruto's clones beneath it, seemingly caused by a detonation of a mine. Naruto thought to himself, feeling the sensations his clone felt before it went off, that's Chinaman's Kai technique he blasts from his palms. After being flung off and bounced off the water's surface, he righted himself and searched the area for his attacker, thinking, he's going to keep doing this. At that point, standing motionless was the worst thing Naruto could do, so he and his surviving clone raced away before another blast sprayed water everywhere where he had been standing. He continued to dodge explosion after explosion, staying a few steps ahead as he searched for a small island of safety in the shape of a partially collapsed building that was still submerged in water following Fatman's bomb, which completely destroyed two struts. When he got there, Naruto bent over and dipped his hands straight into the water, sending a shockwave through his body and into the surrounding area. A vicious attack strategy, but Naruto was unaffected. It was far better than having an enemy he couldn't see attack him from below. Chinaman had undoubtedly jumped to stop him from getting to him because Naruto's developing ability to control electricity wasn't kept a secret during his time in Dead Cell. But Chinaman was probably not prepared for the level of proficiency he had gained over it. Electricity shot through the water with more force than before as he forced more chakra out of his body. Naruto's chakra supply was limited even with his split chakra, so he would use it like a toaster in a bathtub until Chinaman emerged, floating face down. Even if he could hold his breath longer than anyone alive, he couldn't stay down there forever. His clone was waiting with a SOCOM pistol ready to fire a potshot at Chinaman the moment he surfaced. The edge was rightfully his. Not long after, something showed up, but it wasn't Chinaman. Not Chinaman by himself, anyway. A 20-foot-long, solid black dragon surfaced from the water, followed by a man dressed in Chinese clothing who stood back on the surface. Chinaman said, "Do you see now? The limits of my spiritual abilities. In the water I can animate my tattoo with my Kai. Now kill him." His muscles were still tense from nearly getting electrocuted. At a mental command, Naruto's clone fired randomly at the dragon's head, striking it more than 10 times and causing it to roar in rage. Then, the creature tore through the water toward Naruto's metal island, severing its body through the surface like a razor. Chinaman dashed his way and followed his creation as Naruto banished his clone and fled the sanctuary. He no longer had the tattoo on his body, but Naruto didn't care because Chinaman was getting close enough to start fighting him hand to hand. The only thing on Naruto's mind was to make sure he didn't get struck by Chinaman's flat palm in the head or chest at any cost. He would accept the kicks. It was indifferent to the kicks. Because of their close proximity, he would take them and respond with punches and knees of his own, but no palm strikes could land or else. Chinaman was knocked back a few steps when Naruto blocked a low kick aimed at his knee by raising his leg to parry it. He then used that parry to launch a direct front kick that struck Chinaman in the face. With lightning speed, Naruto pulled out his HF blade and sliced down to split Chinaman in two, but in the process, he only managed to sever his body from shoulder to opposing hip. Chinaman's blood was splattered all over Naruto's body, but it didn't stop him. They had both known from the beginning that this would end in death and had come to terms with it as soon as they laid eyes on each other. After getting cut, Chinaman whirled away from Naruto's grasp, but not before attempting to press his advantage and narrowly avoiding the next blows. The dragon that Chinaman had brought to life from his tattoo circled them from beneath their feet, acting as though it were a temporary ring. If Naruto made a mistake, the creature would attempt to kill him by biting down on him. He could avoid dealing with the dragon by remaining near Chinaman and mastering his lethal kung fu. Still, he wished it were gone. He made a clone in the cramped space, and as the clone extended its hands beneath the water and released electricity, he resumed his battle with Chinaman. Amidst Naruto and Chinaman's combat of swordplay and martial arts, the dragon abruptly squirmed and plunged through the water, colliding with both of them and forcing them apart. The Chinaman, who was standing back on the water's surface and had battle wounds on his body, was not amused by what Naruto's clone had done before its sacrifice. Tingwo Shou. Fukong. Listen to me, obey. Naruto, who appeared somewhat worn out, sheathed his sword and observed Chinaman ascend to stand atop the dragon's back before the beast charged straight towards him once more. Fuck this, Naruto uttered as the dragon gaped open its mouth to swallow him whole. Naruto's blue eyes glowed red as he grasped the mystical creature's lower and upper jaws, but he was unable to resist as it relentlessly pushed him back. A dragon, really? he exclaimed in a gravelly voice infused with Kyuubi energy. Over the sound of crashing water, Chinaman exclaimed, "I've been waiting for this for years." Naruto's electricity tore through his body, stopping his laughter and turning it into cries of pain. He was able to shock the dragon severely due to his direct contact with it, and Chinaman also received a fair share of volts. The dragon ceased its forward swim and gave itself a forceful shake of its head in an attempt to get rid of Naruto, but it was unsuccessful because the creature had become enmeshed in its mouth and was holding on tight. He had nowhere to go. This was evident, and as a result, Naruto and Chinaman dove back under the water together. The way he ought to have drowned 2 years ago is right here. As Chinaman made Naruto and his dragon descend farther and farther, he thought to himself. Naruto released his hold on the dragon and avoided getting snagged up by dodging its gaping mouth while holding his breath tightly. He began swimming for the surface right away, but the dragon tried to kill him again, and he had to avoid another move. Naruto gave up trying to escape by swimming and extended his right hand. Chinaman surmised that Naruto was going to make the stupid mistake of attempting to use the solar gun underwater, where it would be completely useless. Rather, the water's flow started to change around him, with his right hand taking center stage. His Rasengan was based on 3 distinct chakra techniques: create rotation, add power, and combine the two. This was just the initial one magnified for practical application. A miniature whirlpool formed in a matter of moments, entangling Chinaman and his dragon. They thought to themselves, "What is this stupid Japanese doing?" He was stuck, but that wasn't really a big deal. "I'll escape and then I'll..." He gasped sharply and looked down to find Naruto's HF blade buried in his stomach, with Naruto gripping onto the hilt. As long as he could hold his breath, he could find a way out, no problem. Naruto let the wild and turbulent current overwhelm him under the cover of his own creation, allowing him to approach Chinaman and end the battle. Though he couldn't kill the dragon, he could kill the man who was behind it, and after finding himself underwater, he made every effort to do just that. He created an opening by spinning the water with his chakra. Naruto started swimming back to the surface with a dead cell member stuck on his sword and inhaled deeply when he did. With Chinaman still writhing on the end of his sword, he rose out of the water. Disregarding this, Naruto led him backward until the tip of the blade struck the side of a pillar supporting the big shell above the water. The sword became stuck quickly when Chinaman attempted to remove it from his body because he didn't know how to turn on its high-frequency vibration effect, which allowed it to cut through anything. Gah, a sword effectively pinned him to a metal pillar. "Why did you join the Navy SEALs to begin with if you hate America?" Naruto asked, gazing as Chinaman's dragon tattoo from the water returned to its natural size and slithered back onto his body, settling back to simple body art. At his question, Chinaman smiled painfully. He wanted to ask him, curious about something rapture. Does it really matter anymore? After they had just fought to the death. Naruto leaned forward on the handle of his blade and said, yes, flatly. Why even join the armed forces to start with? I didn't always hate this country. Chinaman acknowledged, I was sold as a child and my buyer brought me to America. Everything was supposed to be wonderful. America was the place where everyone of every race could live in one place and succeed, be happy. No one would be taken from their homes and sold while the entire country's government stood by and did nothing. All I found here was sickening discrimination, poverty, and in this city of New York it was rampant everywhere. I joined the Navy SEALs to prove I was better than those cowards. Those fools that claim to love liberty, but don't wish to see anyone different with it. Even then I hated this country. But I loved Dead Cell. It didn't matter how different we all were from each other, where we were from, what we were good at, our dreams and motivations. We all had our place. We worked together. In a twisted sort of way, Dead Cell was the embodiment of the American ideal. Admit it, you didn't hate it there. Naruto did not find it offensive to be among them. He adapted to it, even the dumb bomber jokes pulled by Fat Man, the grandfatherly tendencies of Old Boy, and Chinaman's constant sour attitude toward everything. Despite his discomfort with the Romanian man, he actually got along with Vamp, and Colonel Jackson was the coolest commanding officer Naruto had ever had. It's not that I didn't like you guys after a while, Naruto said with a deep frown, but I had to do what I had to do. I had no idea it would have ended up the way it did. He pointed to the surrounding facilities and asked, who the hell would have possibly seen this coming? A victim of circumstance, Chinaman said as his blood flowed down the pillar as a huge, spreading stain. I shouldn't have survived the attempted liquidation of Dead Cell 6 months ago. There was always a contingency plan to handle us just in case we ever went rogue, but your lack of presence amongst us prompted them to pull more people off of the assignment than they would have used had you remained with us, and they didn't adjust their strategy accordingly. We never did anything, and we had to pay because of suspicion that you brought upon us by your actions. They couldn't allow another Foxhound and Shadow Moses incident. This makes it 2 elite units that you destroyed from the inside out. I'm sick of pleading my case. If that's what you believe, I don't care anymore. I know who I am, I know what I did, and if you're still buttered for getting played like a fiddle by the Patriots like I did, you can take that feeling with you all the way to hell. Naruto slammed a hard punch against the metal pillar next to Chinaman's head, deeply denting it. Chinaman gave Naruto a sweet smile as he gazed at him until Naruto made a move to remove his sword. When Naruto twisted the blade in after stabbing him once, he struck his liver and possibly other organs. Just before removing it, Naruto stopped and said, "Wait. He was a dead man. Tell me what those rules of yours are." Naruto said, "Like I said before, there are only 2 rules. Rule number 1 is that there are no rules." His gaze first dipped down to study the sword, then back up into Chinaman's eyes. Chinaman's eyes began to close, and he mumbled, "That doesn't make any sense. There can't be 2 rules if your first rule is that there are no rules. The second rule is that you need to find something to hold on to. You need to find the one thing that you'll never compromise no matter what you do. The one thing that you'll always stick to unconditionally." Naruto replied, closing his eyes to consider that very moment. "My master said that this is the most important thing you can do, because when you accept that there aren't any rules, you're capable of doing absolutely anything to get what you want, but this keeps you in some kind of control. It's a concept to keep your morals limited. And when you don't have anything like that, you'll end up doing things like what Solidus Snake is going to do here today, or even worse, you'll end up like the Patriots." Chinaman's body went limp, but he still said, "I like that." He wondered who had taught him his code of conduct and what his moral limiter was. His head lowered and he stopped moving completely. After a few seconds, Naruto turned on the sword's high-frequency vibration and removed it from Chinaman. With a red trail of blood trailing behind him, he instantly submerged himself face down in the water and floated away, saying, "Kazuhira Miller. And no matter what, it's about my people. My friends, my family. Without them I don't know what would have happened to me by now in this world. That means you too, Kitty. I love you too, Aniki. And I'm sorry, because I'm pretty sure you meant that about Dead Cell too. Are you going to be okay with this?" He did end up building his own set of bonds with Dead Cell, even though it all started because the Patriots wanted to use him for their own purposes and needed to keep an eye on him. He would not have wanted most of them to be in this situation at all, only Fat Man. In reality, how many of them differed from him? Naruto replied, "Yeah, I did really like being in Dead Cell. If it hadn't been for the whole blackmail thing, maybe I could have had fun there." And now that 2 of them had perished as a result of him, he wondered why everything always ended this way. "Otakon and Snake called me to tell me they've got what they were after. I told them where you were. Go somewhere in sight and I'll lead them to you." Naruto said as he emerged from under the struts, "Okay, sweetie." He assumed Snake and Otakon had gone to get what Catherine had been referring to when he heard the sound of a helicopter a short distance away over everything. It's a good idea to free the hostages. His fight had left him drenched to the bone, and the sound of his footsteps resounded beneath the massive big shell. Following his sister's instructions, he stepped outside and winced at the feeling of sunlight striking his eyes after struggling in the plant's shadows. Somewhere in there was a metaphor. When it came to the encounters he had on this mission, Raiden could genuinely find himself surprised by very little. From the beginning, he was inundated with such absurdity that at times, he questioned whether he wasn't high on some sort of hallucinogenic substance. It felt at times like a bad dream because of the dire circumstances he was in on his own, the opponents he was supposed to confront, and the consequences of failing to complete his task. This was just one more of those instances. As directed by the cyborg ninja who had confronted him on the helipad following his defeat of Fat Man, Raiden was able to obtain a disguise that would allow him to blend in with the Gurlukovich mercenaries. He then broke into the heavily guarded Shell 1 core building and entered the building to find a man named Ames who worked for the Secret Service among the hostages detained in a large meeting room. Ames' goal was to locate the president. When he did, he discovered that everything that had happened since the tanker sank years prior had been orchestrated to conceal the development of the new Metal Gear model. His visit to Big Shell, which served as the setting for the presidents and the hostages, capture, was merely a public relations ruse to see how things were going. Not only was there no threat of eco-terrorist action or a $30 billion ransom demanded, but the whole idea was to detonate a nuclear weapon at a high altitude over Manhattan and use an EMP pulse to shut down the entire eastern half of the nation, if not more. Furthermore, since the president's vital signs were crucial to turning on all the components required for the Sons of Liberty's plan to function, it appears that he was aiding them voluntarily. The US president was planning an attack on the nation he presided over. If it hadn't been so terrifyingly real right now, that would have sounded like a routine from a stand-up comedian. With their eyes darting about with suspicion and their voices low, the tied-up Ames said, "The president is in Shell 2 core building." Fortunately, Raiden's extravagant Gurlukovich-Merc attire prevented the others from feeling the need to approach him too closely during their patrols. "Take care of him before they get what they need from him to launch the nuke," they exclaimed. "Take care of him. It doesn't matter what you have to do if he's betrayed us. If they can set that thing off, we all lose." Snake won't hesitate for a second to use what he gets. That brought the situation to an extremely unsettling new level. The notion that he was essentially receiving forgiveness ahead of time for possibly having to assassinate the president from someone who was meant to swear allegiance to protecting him at all costs. Obligated to swear, inquiring further would help him learn more about the situation. Ames had earlier claimed that the Lalilulalo were the same people they worked for. What on earth was that? The sound of spurs jangling drew their attention, so he was never able to ask anything. The distinctive bootsteps of Revolver Ocelot, swaggering straight toward them while casually whistling an American Western song. Ames said in a little panic, "Ocelot is coming. Pick up your AK." Raiden promptly did so and attempted to give the impression that he was threatening Ames' behavior by the time Ocelot arrived at them. Ames was the only captive without a mouthpiece or his eyes covered, unlike the other captives. Nobody was stupid enough to overlook that question, "What do you think you're doing?" Even if Ocelot had been a dull one. Swiftly thinking, as it were, Ames devised a rationale. Raiden said, "I asked him to remove the gag and blindfold. I'm ill, you see," hoping to silence the young man because he didn't think he knew Russian or could speak with a convincing English accent. To Raiden's silent astonishment, Ocelot simply looked down at him before a sly smile appeared on his mustached face. "I always knew that the DIA turned out second-rate liars," he said accusingly. His superiors informed him that Ames worked for the Secret Service. They knew nothing about the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA. He managed to hide it well, but it was obvious that he was stammering from nerves, which Ocelot stopped with a simple raise of the hand. What are you talking about?" "No need for denials." He spoke in a smooth and collected manner. "We know what you are, Colonel Ames." He bowed down, almost as if he wanted to break Ames without even employing his standard interrogation techniques. "They sent you in to keep tabs on him because they knew the president was going to betray them, right?" Ocelot asked, taking a revolver out of its holster. "Sorry, Colonel, you failed to carry out your duties." Even though Ames had a bead of sweat running down his face, he maintained his stiff poker face and said, "You'll never escape the Lalilulalo," with total conviction. He sounded like a man who had long since come to terms with this fact. Ocelot asked, slowly smiling as he raised his pistol to shoot Ames. "Is that so?" Before he could put the man to death, though, Ames started convulsing in agony where he had been restrained and sitting on the ground, asking, "What the?" Ames's eyes popped out in pain and he collapsed. Despite everything, he managed to crawl to his knees and cry out, You tricked me." To Raiden, his eyes full of betrayal. How on earth did Raiden do that? "I understand now," he said, looking terrified at the nearby Russian gunslinger who was still pointing his gun at him. "Ocelot, he said, not even knowing what was going on. Before he could complete his charge, he fell forward onto the ground, lifeless. Raiden had to stop himself mid-move when his first instinct was to get down and see if he could do anything to check for a pulse. Ocelot appeared indifferent to the news that Ames had just passed away, even though he remained concealed. Why would a nameless subordinate give a damn? Which team are you with? Shift your position." The voice of Ocelot reached more people. "Too late, show me your face." Another higher-ranking Gurlukovich mercenary approached Raiden and pointed his AK at him, asking, "Is he on your team?" Ocelot narrowed his eyes and waved his pistol at the man holding Raiden at gunpoint, telling him, "No, he's not one of mine." He didn't hesitate to take action, removing the balaclava from his head and effectively blowing his cover. Ocelot's tone was so smug, as if he had all the cards and knew it, that he seemed neither surprised nor angry at meeting the intruder. We meet at last. As Ocelot raised his gun to aim for Raiden's face, he gritted his teeth and searched his mind for a move. The mind-bending puzzle proved to be terribly needless because he was saved without having to take any action. The cyborg ninja from earlier descended from the meeting hall's rafters, lowering their lethal-looking sword to rest just at Ocelot's left elbow. Regretfully, Ocelot appeared to have excelled in this capacity previously and, like lightning, withdrew his arm to prevent losing it a second time. Undeterred, the ninja moved the sword to the side and killed Raiden's hostage-taker by stabbing him in the chest in one smooth motion. More soldiers had now moved in, and they fired at the strange cyborg ninja, deflecting the bullets with lightning-fast swordsmanship. As he watched everything happen, Raiden thought to himself, that kind of skill. Though he was under protection, it's impossible that the deflected bullets were even striking the many hostages strewn about in different locations. Those are weapons that operate automatically. Hold your fire. Don't risk any of your strays hitting those hostages. We need them alive, yelled Ocelot with authority. The ninja gave Raiden the order, hurry. Get away. Since it appeared that they were at a standstill, Raiden lacked the will and motivation to fight and be a man of valor. He quickly took advantage of the opportunity to take off and flee because he had a mission to complete. A soldier turned to fire at the fleeing Raiden as he ascended the stairs to leave, and Ocelot turned to do the same, but the ninja used the pause in focus to move behind to cover him and protect him on his way out. Meanwhile, Ocelot was having flashbacks to the incident that happened 4 years ago and left him without an arm in the first place. Raiden left quickly, once more not wanting to deal with anything more. Somehow, he had to get out of there and to Shell 2. Aboard commandeered Kasatka, Shell 1 Strut H helipad, with Naruto. As he sat behind the controls of the Russian helicopter Snake had stolen for him, Otacon said, I have to ask, do you ever have a mission where you don't almost get killed? He turned to face the back and saw Naruto sprawled out in the seat, his arm covering his eyes. This is the third time in an hour, isn't it? The brown-haired genius asked with a wry smile on his stubble-covered face as he adjusted his glasses. Oh come on, you're counting the fight with old boy and the explosion after it was over as separate things, aren't you? Bullshit. No, you better lump that together. Naruto bellowed as he frowned and covered his eyes once more. 3, that seems a little much, he thought to himself. Snake broke the brief moment of reverie when he crashed into the helicopter's hull from the outside and leapt into the cargo section, where Naruto was riding. We've got to go meet up with the Raiden guy. Go now, he said, his eyes darting to the helipad stairs. Before Snake could respond or attempt to deflect any accusations, a small group of Gurlukovich mercenaries ran up the stairs that Snake had just ascended and moved forward to open fire on the chopper. Damn it, Snake, Naruto yelled as he jumped up and started blocking bullets with his sword. Otacon started working on getting the chopper off the helipad while Naruto stared at Snake suspiciously. What did you do? With a gesture toward Otacon, Snake yelled, get this thing off the ground and head that way. Keep it up, kid, said Snake, leaning over Otacon's seat and shoulder as he nodded and tried his best to get the helicopter airborne while their younger ally was occupied deflecting bullets. Naruto did not have cyborg body enhancements that would have allowed him to see the bullets he was blocking, nor was he a replacement for bulletproof sighting. Instead, he said, kiss my ass. You brought this evil on me. They eventually took off and traveled to a completely different area of Big Shell, out of the Gurlukovich mercenaries' line of sight. They eventually saw a figure emerging from the shadows of one of the buildings connected to a multi-level bridge with stairs, as well as numerous vats and pipes running along it and on it, as they passed strut after strut through the skies. Snake pointed to the young man with white hair wearing a black suit that gave off a skeletal appearance and said, right there. He appeared to have already been through a lot. After giving him a wave and receiving one in return from the bridge, Snake said, okay, let's put this down somewhere where he can get to us easily. In his whole life, Raiden had never been happier to see a Russian helicopter. It didn't matter that, in all honesty, it had been his first time seeing a Russian helicopter in the field. At last, he had assistance from someone he trusted to support him. Reaching them would be all he needed to do for things to turn around. He noticed a man with thick gray hair and a black trench coat leaning against the wall that led to the interior of the nearby strut, and he said, I've been waiting for you. The man responded, messenger from the Patriots. He was drawn to this man by the feeling of another presence in the area. That thing was there once more. Patriots. How in the hell? So you're the boss around here. Was becoming stale. How did I come to know him? The gray-haired man's thoughts had to stop when his prey questioned him. No, not just around here. I'm the boss to surpass Big Boss himself, he said, grinning as he emerged and revealed his bearded face. Solid Snake. That is not Solid Snake. The man's voice could still be heard clearly enough for both men on the bridge to notice it over the noise of the engine and helicopter blades. One of them, still grinning provocatively, glared up at the figure inside, saying, "What a pleasant surprise, brother. Don't tell me you've forgotten me, Snake." With a furious expression on his face, Snake exclaimed, "Save it. You're no brother of mine. Raiden, take cover." He didn't waste any time in firing his rifle at his imposter, but he moved very quickly, extraordinarily quick. Able to run down a flight of stairs and into the open with ease, avoiding his shots in a straight line. The man lost his trench coat in the explosion that the gunshots caused, and it became evident how he was able to do that. Shit. An exoskeleton suit. Undaunted, Snake reloaded, aimed once more, and fired, saying, "Stop impersonating him." The man's whole body tensed up as he seemed to be focusing harshly before the muscles on his suit expanded, bulking him up mysteriously. He only concerned himself with covering his head and used the arm of his suit to block the bullets from hitting his only obvious vital spot. "Brother, I'm a whole different game from Liquid." Changing course, Snake inserted a grenade into the launcher and fired it directly at the enemy, but he leapt high enough to avoid the blast and landed on the thick pipe that lined the now burning side of the bridge. He taunted from below, "Is that the best you can do, Snake?" but was forced to dive to the side once more when Snake threw another grenade at him. A Harrier that had been waiting beneath the facility when he had set up this little ambush for Raiden saved him from what appeared to be a certain fall to his death. "There's only room for one Big Boss," he exclaimed as he descended into the cockpit after the pilot had opened it for him. As the Harrier's missiles closed in on them, Otacon made the most of the time he had been given to turn the helicopter around. Fortunately, the structures that made up the big shell moved aside to obstruct the initial salvo and give them some breathing room. Unfazed by this fortunate coincidence, the Harrier pivoted and accelerated, circumnavigating the other building to gain enough altitude for some thrilling sprints. With beads of sweat streaming down his face, Snake exclaimed, "Crap. That's the Harrier that used to be on Strut H's helipad." He turned to face Naruto, who had been tossed around in the backseat ever since Snake had Otacon whip them around to fight, and asked, "Well? You seriously want me to do something about this? It's a goddamn Harrier jet. I've got a pistol and a submachine gun. What do you think I can do from here?" Naruto asked, attempting to force his way through the cargo hold to the front seats. Snake pointed to the missile launcher kit they had in the cargo hold and said, "You've got this. Go for it. I shot down a chopper with Stinger missiles stuck on a rooftop." "You're lucky I'm only doing this because I hate all of the US presidents," Otacon retorted, lowering the aircraft enough for someone like Naruto to jump out safely. He then grabbed the Stinger kit and leapt out, watching the Harrier get some mobility to make itself a hard target. "I plan on beating both of your asses after this is over," he said. He must have said nothing because the Harrier screamed in and began firing at them, forcing Naruto to move as the Kasaka started to disappear. He rolled deeply to his feet and looked up at the sky, trying to find any trace of the plane. "Go on. That thing is enormous. How on earth could it have disappeared so quickly?" As the Harrier gradually raised itself over the side of Naruto's building, the sound of boosters filled his ears. "Hello, Mr. President." Nose turned to face him as though it was staring him down. Naruto asked, speculating about the missile's speed and whether he could get out of their blast radius in time to avoid hitting a roof. Through the plane's audio system, a voice with an Eastern European accent said, "Hello, Rapture." "Vamp. The only person with that particular accent who would refer to him as such was him. Is that you?" "Yes. I was wondering when it would be my turn to see you after you finished off old boy, but I assumed Chinaman would get you first." As Naruto spoke, he kept in mind that he was speaking with a massive death machine that had long since been supposed to shoot him. He tried, and he got really close too. And him without anything to replace it up there as well. "I killed him. He's floating down there somewhere under Big Shell. Now why are you in the Harrier?" was the proper conclusion at this point. "I'm piloting while King does his best to kill all of you. Why isn't he shooting me yet? He's waiting for the Kasaka to come back around to foolishly try to save you so we can destroy it. We can kill you anytime as long as you're up here. You've nowhere to go and nowhere to hide." That made sense, though. Yes, Naruto was in possession of a Stinger, but before he could even attempt to aim, they would shoot him. "Well then," he exclaimed, Raising his hands, I surrender. I want to talk to Olga anyway. The statement, really? You're just giving up, sounded strange. Rapture never gave up on anything. The opportunity to torment him for several hours before he actually got to speak with the woman, so Naruto scoffed at the idea. No, I said I want to talk to Olga and I can't find her. That's the only reason I'm doing this, it's just that you're getting something out of it too. Now let me talk to your boss so I can discuss terms of surrender. After a little while in the cockpit, Naruto heard the voice of a former American official. I apologize, but the Sons of Liberty are not in the business of taking prisoners, said President George Sears. Bullshit. You've got 30 of them around here somewhere. Those are hostages. There's a difference. Still raising his hands, Naruto snarled, I hate politicians. If you'll tell me what you wanted to say to her, I'll relay the message, posthumously of course. Naruto was staring down at the Harrier once more, wishing he could look into Sears or Vamp's eyes as he said, I'll save it for when I see her. But I do have something to say to you. Look at Vamp, now back to me. Back to Vamp, back to me. I am not Vamp. I'm flipping you off. Look at the horizon, back to me. Where'd the stinger go? It's gone. I threw it, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. So he flung away the only weapon he was holding. Significant, that simply made killing him simpler. Sears had no time to react before a missile shot from behind into the side of the Harrier, causing it to rock. Glancing to the side, Sears saw Raiden smiling and carrying the smoking stinger kit while preparing to launch another missile. Up Vamp, up! The bastard exclaimed. He never received a response from the Kasaka saying, I should have shot that little. Right away, King. Vamp raised the Harrier higher and away from Raiden, then turned to face the rooftop again and noticed Naruto was gone. Where did he go? He wondered. He did not leapt. Rapture was not mad. There is no way. Even though he was strong, he could not withstand a fall like that into the water below. The plane's systems immediately began malfunctioning and going crazy, leaving the pilot to wonder, what the hell is going on? When he heard the boosters start to kick on and try rising higher, Naruto stuck himself to the bottom of the Harrier's exterior, stabbed his HF blade into the hull, and charged as much electricity into it as he could, yelling, Die 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 die. He then started pumping all of his remaining juice into the aircraft before it became too dangerous to be any higher and jumped off. Electricity continued to flow through the plane, killing the boosters and every other piece of equipment before it collapsed out of the sky and smashed straight through the middle of the bridge into the water below. With a great deal of the bridge taken out, Raiden had to dive for his life to stay afloat. Naruto landed by stabbing his sword into a building's side. He dragged for a while before stopping and saying, Yes, I did it. I'm the best. Fuck you, Snake. Take your pussy chopper win and shove it. I shot down a Harrier all by myself in broad daylight with a sword. With his free hand in the air. From their side of the entirely destroyed bridge, Raiden yelled up at Naruto, Hey, I'm right here. I hit the thing with a missile first. Naruto argued, lowering himself to the metal structure and drawing his sword. And it stayed in the air. You shot it once. I killed it. I don't even know you anyway. So this was the guy who sneaked up on them from behind. He doesn't look so tough, but then again, he killed Fat Man and survived Vamp, said the Raiden guy. That must be significant in some way. The assessment was not one-sided, though, as Raiden took a moment to try and learn as much as he could about Naruto. If Pliskin is Solid Snake and Otakon is his partner, then who would this be? Raiden asked himself. To him, Naruto remained a mysterious figure, and philanthropy was credited as little more than a two-man show. The peaceful sounds of crackling flames and water were interrupted by a guttural roar, so meet and greet time had to wait until later. The previously shot down Harrier was being held in its jaws by a monstrous aquatic metal monster that emerged from the water. No, Naruto thought to himself, no, 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 damn it. He knew that damn thing anywhere. Metal Gear Ray. The tanker that caused all of this chaos to begin with. For all the trouble he had caused the world in the latter half of the 20th century and the early 21 Stone, the insane bastard who had developed the original theory behind bipedal tanks armed with 3/4 of an armory within them and nuclear capabilities needed to burn in hell. Burn. Within, as hell. Metal Gear. With a mental yell, Raiden aimed his stinger toward the water by pointing it down over the bridge. High explosives had figured out how to kill everything, and they would certainly work here, even though he had no idea what to do with it. Until Naruto snatched him by the arm and yanked him into a sprint alongside him, asking, What are you doing? It appears that firing Ray from the open wasn't the best idea because as soon as it emerged from the water, Multiple cluster bomb salvos were launched into the air, threatening to destroy them all from below. It was such a dangerous barrage that Otakon had to take a blast to get the nearby hovering Kasaka out of the way. Sadly, this also separated them from Raiden and Naruto, essentially dividing them all apart once more. Raiden was strong and Naruto could see that he was far more athletic than Snake. "Shut up and help me jump," Raiden exclaimed. That was one way he was closer to him. Very close, in fact, if he didn't have a few advantages. And that meant they could potentially avoid it altogether. Raiden somehow saw the scene and began to pace with Naruto as they raced toward the edge of the shattered and broken bridge. With fiery death released from above and descending toward them, what other option was there to him but to say, "We can't make that jump, even if we doubled up our leg strength. Not in one bound, no, that's why we're aiming for parts we can both kick off of, we can do it." Whatever it was that gave this blonde-haired individual such confidence to platform jump off of raised metal sheets and segmented support beams dozens of yards across like they were in some kind of deranged Crash Bandicoot game. Raiden had no idea, but he could sure as hell use some of it. Shell 2 power plant, Strut J. Other parts of the facility had also sustained damage from the bombs that had destroyed Struts G and H and rattled the second shell. Fat Man, the stupid bomber, damn him. Fortunately, Strut J had not endured nearly as much pain. Once Olga's Gerlukovich mercenaries had finished wiping out the last remnants of Old Boy's Fallschirmjäger, sparks began to rain down from the ceiling throughout the transformer chamber. What remains of them after Naruto, in less than 2 minutes, destroyed over 30 heavily armed Special Forces soldiers. A random crackle from the damaged ceiling wires caught Olga's attention. The remnants of Old Boy's unit will be outfitted as Arsenal Tengu, so at least there will still be a use for them, she thought to herself. With an unreadable expression on her face, she stared at the falling electric sparks. "Where are you, Uzumaki?" she whispered to herself in Russian. From behind her, at the 2-story control point, a feminine voice said, "All Rapture knows how to do is take things from this world." She wouldn't have said anything so bluish if it hadn't been Wolf. Meryl's voice sounded far more youthful, so it wasn't her. It was evident from the word's content and the voice's depressing tone that it was Fortune. Olga tried not to show how surprised she was that someone other than her men had penetrated that far inside Strut J without first getting a radio warning, unless, that is, she had been there before she went into the power plant room, which actually infuriated her. It did indeed upset her, but then, not much about that day had not upset her in the first place. "Do you know how he wound up getting his name in Dead Cell?" Fortune asked, not getting a response. "I was told it was because he entered every battle he fought, took the majority of his missions, with a bright expression on his face. Often with a smile. He was a favorite of his commanding officer, my husband, who gave him his codename Rapture." Taking Olga's silence as permission to continue, Fortune walked around the railing and down the stairs to the ground level of the power plant. That sounds appropriate. She hadn't met him face to face for the past 2 years, but she recognized him from their previous encounter, which took place right before the tanker disaster. His demeanor could easily disarm you if you weren't aware of its extreme danger. And because of him and his own ignorance to the repercussions of his loose cannon-side dealings, he took everything from me in one night. "And you suffered as well from the exact same incident, didn't you?" Fortune said, her voice becoming more and more powerful as she tightened her grip. "He was a reckless man with no allegiance to the unit." "Yes, but the only reason he ended up on that tanker was because of Olga. She begged for his assistance. To remove Metal Gear Ray before her father could make a stupid decision. It was Olga who had sent him away to New York in the first place, regardless of whether it was his fault that her father was killed. Fortune's father was killed, and her husband was imprisoned. She was gnashing her teeth at Fortune's inadvertent prodding, so it was a good thing her back was turned. She was genuinely trying to build a relationship with him, attempting to ignore the fact that the main reason they were connected was that her father had intended to steal Ray from her father, and that they had ultimately fallen victim to the worst-case scenario. To be honest, it was friendly, but Olga was not feeling very up to it. Olga said, at last finding her voice calm enough to speak, "Please don't try to compare the two of us based off of Naruto Uzumaki or Rapture, whatever you wish to refer to him as. What was left of Dead Cell anyway, because they were 3 down, and only Fortune and Vamp were left. When I come across him I will deal with him. And what makes you think you'll find him before I kill him or Solid Snake? Every time one of your Dead Cell members has come across him, it has been because he has chosen to come forward. You won't see him unless he wants to see you, and there's no reason for that because he does not know you," Olga said, turning to look over her shoulder before turning to leave with a cryptically bored expression on her face. "And he knows you?" Without saying anything more, the Russian mercenary commander left the power plant room and discovered some companions leaning against the wall directly outside. "Wolf, Olga said softly to one of her favorite soldiers. Any news? Olga appeared to blink in shock at the news, but the stocky sniper cast a smug smile on her lips and said, well, Solidus lost the Harrier. Apparently the Solidus philosophy on there being no kill, like overkill, doesn't apply with my little probie. Solidus lost the Harrier? As in shot down, lost? Olga asked, still standing there, trying to make sense of what she had just heard. Stabbed and electrocuted down would be a more accurate statement, but yes. He lost the Harrier to someone on foot, and his left eye from the crash. He's still alive, as is Vamp who was piloting, but I would avoid him for the time being. Olga had to force herself not to smile, almost amusedly, at the twitch of her mouth muscles. What a macabre thing to find amusing. She probably couldn't look him in the eye without grinning darkly, so it was a good thing the man was currently stewing and bitching with the on-call medics. Dismissing Solidus and his wounds, Wolf said airily, he did always wish to be like Saladin. The fact that the man aspired to be Big Boss's twin gave her great dislike. Now he looks more like him than ever. He lost the wrong eye though. Olga remarked, tracing the diagonal scar across her face. Uzumaki is such a cruel fighter even if he's unaware of it. If he doesn't kill you he'll leave his mark in victory. She stopped and gave Wolf a serious look, asking, what will you do when the time comes? Wolf said, I didn't tell him where to find you earlier when he came to me, nor did I inform you of the fact that I met with him at all. By this time, all sign of humor and fun had disappeared from his blue eyes. Yes, judging by Olga's expression, that did not sit well with her at all, but Wolf was unconcerned. She promised to do her nothing in return. And why are you telling me this now when it has absolutely no relevance? Or, to put it another way, why the hell didn't you call me sooner? Wolf was too important. We all agree that this is between you and him. We will not take sides, right up until the bitter end. She specifically emphasized that he hadn't seen her face. I'm not the only one. All of us have. Meryl, Johnny, and myself. You're the only one whose face he hasn't seen yet. Olga said, placing her hands on her hips, that's fine. It's best if you all just stay away. I never said that you had to. Olga never even wanted any of you to come here with her. If you're going to do it and you win, at least make sure that you face him before you finish it. I won't be able to ambush him. I plan on battling him head on. Olga stopped before she could go all the way to the end of the hallway when she heard Wolf speak to her in such a harsh manner. That's not what I meant and you know it. Although she was always laid back, she gave off the impression that she was very serious when she said, have the courage to let him know who killed him if it comes to that. She didn't look back. Olga didn't clarify if she would do so or not, she simply continued, when? You mean when it comes to that? Wolf was limited to a single sigh. For a long time, it had been out of her hands and the hands of anyone else who could stop it. With Shell 2 Strut L, Shell 2 Core Bridge in Naruto. As he and Raiden sat outside in a crawlspace beneath the bridge, Naruto thought to himself, this has got to be some kind of record. It was constructed as a maintenance area in case any of the thick wires or pipes broke, but these days people use it as a place to hide and catch their breath. A guy like Naruto could take advantage of all the little nooks and crannies that Catherine was such a wonderful girl to get. Naruto, leaning on his elbows, looked over at Raiden, who was on his hands and knees and breathing heavily. You alright over there? He asked, his eyes focused on the nearby underside of the bridge. I took a rest about an hour ago and I'm technically taking another one here. Some kind of record. Yes, that's okay. And he was. He simply wasn't used to running what was roughly 2 miles when one took into consideration all of the turns, hallways, and other features that made up Big Shell. At least I think I learned part of a new trick. Oh, and that also included the jumping on slender and precarious pieces of open-air metal that used to be a bridge. Seriously, forget Manhattan. The facility had to be half the size of Manhattan. For the first time in probably a month or more, Naruto smiled at that. Before Naruto encouraged Raiden to learn how to jump properly for elevated transportation in order to prevent Metal Gear Ray from blowing their tails to bits. Raiden wasn't all that far from learning how to do so. I thought this mission would just be full of fugly guys, cuz that's all I've seen so far, Catherine said, almost rolling his eyes at the first thing he'd heard since he linked up with Snake and Otakon at the Kasatka. Naruto could hear Catherine's voice through their constant codec connection. Wow, he's really cute and icky. Down girl, I didn't know you were into pretty boys, Naruto murmured softly enough for Raiden to miss. A handsome boy with fighting skills, countered Catherine, same as you. It's probably related to the brother complex. She laughed past the pause. Why are we talking about this now anyway? What about Snake and Otakon? What happened to the Kasatka? Talk to me here, kitten. Naruto scowled and shook his head. I'm not a pretty boy. Okay. I was just stalling until I could patch into pretty boy's frequency so he can hear this too. You want that, right? I haven't done it yet if you don't. Naruto told himself and his sister, go ahead. It'll save me from having to parrot everything you say. When Raiden was finally able to gather his thoughts, he received a surprise call on his personal codec from an unidentified frequency. He turned to face Naruto, who gave him a nod and motion with his hand as though something like this was meant to happen. Raiden answered with a raised eyebrow and a touch at his ear. Hello? Hi. I'm Catherine. Distance support for Naruto, Snake, and Otakon. Nice to meet you. I wish you'd have used my dead cell codename Kitty, but I guess it doesn't really matter, Raiden said, turning to face Naruto, who was just mouthing the words, little sister. Honestly, though, what difference did it make when his only vulnerable loved one was already involved with him? You're in Dead Cell? Raiden inquired, clenching his teeth. Dead Cell had more than satisfied him. They'd all been strange. Speaking of which, he claimed to have seen the vamp person running on the water's surface below as they were sprinting over the remains of that bridge. How in the hell? Not only did he run across the water as if it were land, but he also shot that fucker in the head back when he was clearing out Fat Man's bombs. Aniki used to be, but he was kicked out after getting framed for taking part in sinking the tanker here. Kind of stupid since he was blackmailed into joining them to begin with. Hold on. The Naruto. One of the conspirators with Solid Snake's philanthropy goes by that name. And he was also a part of the incident involving Shadow Moses. That entailed, so Pliskin really is Snake. The real Solid Snake. But I thought both of you were dead. Nope. Raiden's patience and nerves had been fraying all day, but the way Naruto referred to himself and his work with a legend in Snake was the final straw. Why would any of you want to do this? I'm here because I have to be. I was assigned. What makes any sane person want to be a part of something like this? Raiden asked. The first thing that came to Naruto's mind was that he wasn't very sane, but he could definitely understand Raiden's perspective. I was free, allowed to disappear, but I don't want to turn into some kind of despicable person that would turn my back on the people that I care about just to save my own skin. Raiden was thinking, there's more to this than any of us know. And people I know are in serious trouble here. Raiden wanted to probe further, but the expression in Naruto's eyes made it clear that he wouldn't reveal anything important in that area. If something went wrong, he would probably upset Naruto, and he didn't seem like the kind of person he wanted to offend over trivial matters. He wanted to keep his personal demons to himself, God knows. He had a ton of questions, including how they had survived the tanker sinking, how in the world Naruto had learned to perform the actions he had demonstrated previously, and whether or not the cyborg ninja he had encountered was also connected. Catherine expressed it more effectively than her brother could. Snake would say that we fight because we have a responsibility to the future generations to rid the world of Metal Gear, as a way of correcting the mistakes we've made as a species. You've already heard Aniki's reason. I'm just here because I love my brother, and I refuse to let him get himself killed with no one caring for him. Raiden muttered to himself, she sounds like my girlfriend, and made a note to call Rosemary as soon as he was finished there to reassure her that everything was well. I assume you know about the new model being developed here, since Philanthropy is an anti-Metal Gear organization, he said to Rosemary. He was too poor to allow himself to become starstruck. Even with reasonable goals, Philanthropy remained essentially terrorist in their approach to attaining them. With his sheathed sword resting on the ground, Naruto nodded in agreement. Yep, but each of us, Snake, Otakon, and me, has a personal stake in this. Snake wants the Metal Gear removed. As I mentioned earlier, I came here for others. Otakon came here because his sister is being held captive in the big shell. This isn't a place to sell your scores and ease your mind. This is a military mission. I'm sure you have a point somewhere, but I just can't bring myself to care enough to see it. Naruto and Raiden were staring at each other, neither of them feeling the need to back down from a confrontation. Aside from the seagulls and the waves below, it was dead quiet. Naruto, however, soon had enough. The president's in the shell too, core, right? Raiden asked, realizing that nothing he could accomplish by kicking him out of the crawl space and into the water for getting in his face would help. Yeah? And? Raiden asked, a little irritated, refusing to let their disagreement end so lightly. How do you know that? He asked. Naruto said, leave that to me. I'll take care of him, I promise. Without really responding. I've got friends all over the place. That was more than Snake had promised him during the earlier discussion of the president. However, Naruto left him with more than that as he stood up and prepared to leave by putting his sword back on his back. You're here to find out how to stop the Metal Gear being built here, aren't you? Once they got past the small talk and back to business, Raiden's glare disappeared. Yeah. It's all a part of my objective to disarm the terrorists. Naruto stepped out to the edge of the underbridge hideout hole they had temporarily taken refuge in, saying, "Look for a girl named Emma Emmerich. She's a scientist being held hostage here and she had a big part in creating the eye for something huge from what I've heard. She should be somewhere in the core too. You should spend the time I'm taking to secure President Johnson looking for someone that can help you with that. It's a better use of our time," he said. Raiden countered, "Why should I even trust you? Why should I listen to you?" Raiden growled as the white-haired operative ran to the opening and looked up to see Naruto had already crossed the bridge and disappeared from his sight. Naruto finished, "Because I'm faster than you, and guys in second place don't get first dibs. Rangers lead the way." Raiden asked himself, "Ranger? The guy's more like a ninja." Well, he could still hear Catherine's voice over the codec, and it sounded as though she was berating the now absent Naruto during his line. "I'll talk to him though, it's no excuse for being a jerk to someone that can help. He's not really that nasty. It's just that this mission is really important to him. That was so mean, Iniki." Recalling the finned deathbot that surfaced from the water and almost killed them, Raiden said, "You shouldn't have to apologize for your brother." Nevertheless, he appeared to calm down considerably. "It's okay though. If I can count on him to get to the president, I can get to the scientist and see what we can do about Metal Gear." Oops. Something got lost in translation. Metal Gear Ray isn't the thing we need to know how to stop. Getting rid of that is as simple as just destroying it, even though that isn't really easy. Ray is kind of old. We're talking about an entirely new Metal Gear. So the real threat wasn't even the Metal Gear he had never seen before that had attempted to kill him. And why was it no one told that to him? Rather than receiving the information from the commander of one of the world's most sophisticated military units, did he really need to get that bit of information from the incredibly youthful information manager of a fringe organization who sounded like she still needed to be in college? From the moment he stepped onto the rusty, overgrown buoy in the middle of the sea, people had been withholding information from him. God damn it, Colonel. Oh dear. Well, okay. Listen to what we've learned about it so far before you call your commanding officer and go off on him. It'll give you a chance to calm down and you'll have some ammunition to pressure him into some answers at least. Medical bay. Arsenal gear on board. With dull pain, Solidus roared, "Damn them all." He held up his hand, seemingly in the hope that his vision would return to his missing eye, even though he had an eye patch on his left eye. He said, "Vamp will make them suffer." With his arms folded across his chest, Ocelot stood close to the boy and grinned at his misfortune, saying, "I told you the boy was dangerous. He doesn't fight as young as he is. He might as well be 32 instead of 22 when it comes to experience." As if Ocelot would be served well to consider his next move, Solidus said, a little dangerously, "You sound somewhat proud." The Russian cowboy took a few steps around the room and barked with laughter, saying, "Not at all. I'm just glad it's not just me that's having trouble with these young upstarts." Solidus stood up, the pain in his eye having mostly subsided from the painkiller earlier, and said, "The next generation doesn't know which way is up. They're easy to control, and they're grossly predictable. That's why the Patriots were able to make the country the way that it is. But you're forgetting that it was our generation that allowed them to take control." At Ocelot's point, Solidus froze, then scoffing, he left the room and said to the soldiers, "Arsenal gear will be operational by sundown. Spread the word to the soldiers that Big Shell must be cleared entirely by 1900 hours. Whatever you say, Solidus." With Snake, Strut H helipad, Shell 1. While Otakon was attempting to make repairs, Snake was becoming restless and acting as the guard dog while smoke continued to trail from the commandeered Kasika's tail. Before the Sons of Liberty outgrew the place, they still had to get innocent people out of there as quickly as possible. He reached into one of his pockets and grimaced as he remembered giving Raiden the pack of cigarettes from there earlier. Well, whatever. It made no difference, he carried an additional pack in a vest pocket. Otakon, whose entire focus was on repairing the damage caused by Metal Gear Ray's careless missile strike, reprimanded, "You've got to quit smoking." Despite his inability to smell the lit cigarette, he nevertheless said, "To be honest, it struck more of the, what's the point of it all? Big shell buildings than anything else." Snake said, wishing they could talk about something worthwhile if they had to talk at all. "We've had this conversation hundreds of times before. The point is that I want to smoke. What other possible reason does there need to be? And I'm standing 30 feet away from you, so just drop it." Indeed, Otakon answered, accustomed to hearing similar remarks from Snake whenever his naughty little habit surfaced. With a cigarette hanging from his mouth, Snake looked up at the sun that had begun to dip below the western horizon. To put it mildly, the past few hours had been quite crazy. They had received word from Catherine that Raiden and Naruto were doing well and returning to Shell 2. "You think Raiden's really going to save my sister?" Otakon asked, relieved that Raiden had agreed to save Emma Emmerich and that he could now concentrate on working on the helicopter, which was what they all needed for the time being. "Oh yeah, the kid's as green as they come when it comes to a real-life mission like this, but he'll get the job done. There's something about him," said Snake, nodding and taking a moment to release his smoke into the air. "You think Naruto's going to save the president?" "Yeah, that's the better question, isn't it? Wasn't he the one that?" The sound of something other than seagulls and ocean water suddenly filled his ears, and Snake said, "Shush." It wasn't a cipher robot because he didn't hear any whirring. The sound abruptly stopped as soon as he alerted Otakon. Slowly making her way toward the stairs, Snake hid behind the scattered shelves and crates on the rooftop helipad and bided her time. When they got to the top, they would have shot at one or both of them if there had been anyone up there. To his deduction, nobody had joined them up there yet. Snake?" With a deep sigh, Snake heard Otakon's nervous voice. He didn't even have to look back to understand what had happened, but he had to deal with it somehow so they could move on, damn it. A figure emerged from the back of the helicopter, turning around and holding Otakon captive with an arm around his neck. The figure had his gun trained. Snake's thoughts were racing about how he was going to free Otakon without getting hurt and identify the bastard who had taken him hostage when he heard the voice. "That's got to be the record, right?" A young female voice exclaimed with a hint of amusement. "Wow, I got the drop on Solid Snake twice in my life." He was on the verge of dropping his gun, nearly. "Meryl?" A startled Snake asked as a woman emerged from behind the helicopter, one arm still wrapped around Otakon's neck. "Check for red hair. There at her waist, an enormous, damn desert eagle." Yes, it wasn't really necessary for him to search elsewhere. The only other female soldier who would consider carrying that damn thing around was her. Nice suit. Meryl Silverberg. Since the conclusion of Shadow Moses, he had not seen her. Upon realizing that Snake had remembered her, she grinned and said, "It looks like Naruto did come here with some company. Good to see you guys again." Otakon said, "Nice to see you too," still a little perspiring from being gripped from behind by someone who could kill him with ease. He still had plenty of reasons to worry about his position, even though she wasn't strangling him or holding him firmly enough to break his neck. Meryl did just that, turning to face Snake, who was still pointing his gun at her, and giving him an apologetic look before saying, "Seriously, Snake? If I wanted to fight, I would have actually brought soldiers. You're making myself look silly. Put the gun down." "Well said. Nevertheless, why are you working with the Sons of Liberty? I can imagine that you're bitter at the military after how they handled what happened in Alaska, but this..." Wrong." Meryl replied with a thumbs down. "I'm not here working with the Sons of Liberty. I don't take orders from a single one of those bastards. I'm here because of Olga, that's all. I don't like this, but she wouldn't turn the mission down, and I want to make sure that if things go too far south I can get her out." The girl from Gerlukovich? Yes, Snake was familiar with her from their fight 2 years prior. "Why?" Meryl angrily said, "Because we were blacklisted after Shadow Moses. Me, Sniper Wolf, Johnny, and Naruto too. Half of them were incredibly inexperienced and didn't know how to vanish like Snake did. 2 of us hadn't been soldiers for even 6 months yet. Not to come across as overly controlling, but she had a good reason for her attitude. We would have ended up like the surviving genome soldiers if we'd stayed, or worse. But Naruto got us to Alaska, and whether he had to sell his soul or who knows what, he got Olga to get the Gerlukovich mercenaries to take us in, and I won't turn my back on him or her. She didn't need to be there for any other reason than that, especially after she found out Naruto was present and had the opportunity to see him for herself. And so, there she was, and there she would stay, through thick and thin, whatever happened. Alright, I can't believe I'm saying this of all people, but enough with the cloak and dagger crap." Snake replied with a furious arm gesture. "What do you know? The kid's been gloom and doom since he found out that Gerlukovich was in on this. He's been pitted against comrades before and he fought well then. Even the dead cell surprise didn't throw him off as much as this is. What is going on with him? He fought with Chinamen before when he didn't have to. Well, this is infinitely more important than that petty squabbling macho bullshit." Meryl insisted, her eyes narrowing as she brushed past him, purposefully bumping his shoulder. "I know enough about it, and it's not my place to tell or interfere." That girl was fundamentally still the same. Incredibly obstinate. For once, Snake sensed an impending confrontation that didn't involve him. That said, he still didn't like it at all. However, each individual was present for their own reasons, and there was nothing he could do if one person's motives did not conflict with another's. As an adult, Naruto was responsible enough to know what he wanted from today, just like Otakon did, even though he didn't want to disclose his true feelings to anyone. Before she could go, Snake commanded, "Wait." He would not do anything but simply ask that you tell him what's going on and do what you can, please. The 23-year-old girl gave him a stern look before she finally gave in and turned to face them again. "Okay, I'll make it quick. I need to get back before they activate the new Metal Gear, because by then I think we'll all be screwed," she said. Included Raiden. Shell 2 core building, first floor basement, filtration room. The whole lower level. The Shell 2 core's entire lower level was underwater. Everything was completely submerged, including rooms, stairwells, and hallways. Fat Man is a moron, as are his bombs. Raiden desired to murder him once more. He deeply regretted not having saved the mask that came with his skull suit for precisely this kind of situation, but he never imagined that he would need to spend extended periods of time underwater once more. Finding a pocket of air, he surfaced and inhaled deeply, saying, "Hate Naruto so much." It didn't matter if he was aware that the area was flooded or not. He was a lucky bastard if he didn't do it, a bastard if he did. Raiden thought that this was a good time to contact his superiors. "Colonel, the president is being secured, and I'm on my way to find an engineer that can help stop Arsenal Gear." He grabbed one hand up to hang onto the flooded room's ceiling. "That's fine, Raiden, but don't forget your two objectives. To stop the terrorist threat, and to rescue the president. Make sure your priorities are correct here." Speaking of priorities and the terrorist threat, when were you going to let me in on the fact that this whole place was a front for building Arsenal Gear? That the real one is far beneath the ocean, down at the foundations of Big Shell? That was top secret information far beyond your level of clearance. Arsenal Gear was a high-level project of the Navy. Even I wasn't privy to it until the name started flying around, the colonel finally said over Raiden's codec line after a moment. Raiden, whose current situation has only made him more grumpy, said, "I'm feeling like I'm having the wool pulled over my eyes here, Colonel. No more secrets. If there's anything else I need to know to do my job, tell me. I'm finding out more and more that you basically sent me in blind. This was no innocent child, I'll tell you when you're older, type of thing." All the things they had not disclosed to him about his mission had almost certainly led to his near death and would continue to do so. "Jack, please just calm down." Rosemary reappeared. He couldn't understand how she could have been so composed, knowing everything he was picking up on the spot. That girl was quite tough. "I'm scared too, but right now you've got to focus. The last thing I want is you getting hurt because your mind was elsewhere." He ended the conversation and dove back underwater, navigating the hallways and squeezing through the piled-up debris-blocking paths until he needed more air and found another place to take a temporary breather. "All right," Raiden said, wondering if the colonel kept her tapped into their conversations so she could get him to cool down once he got too heated. As he swam, he'd seen more than his share of dead bodies just floating along underwater. "God, I seriously hope this Emma girl isn't stuck in this." Icy faces frozen in a state of constant panting. When the floor flooded, they had nowhere to go. "I hope that nobody else would suffer the same fate." He's calling his codec again, huh? He was popular today, after all. He was going to curse that jerk for getting the short end of their split mission if it was Naruto. "Raiden. It's Otakon. What's your status?" Good heavens, a knowledgeable person to chat with for a while. With one hand to stay afloat and his other over his ear, Raiden joked, miserable and wet. The seawater that has been pumped up from the ocean floor is flooding into the building. What? No, that was never a good thing to hear, and he didn't want to hear it now. "I've got something I need to tell you about son of a bitch. She's afraid of water. She nearly drowned in our swimming pool with my father when she was 6. She's not able to swim." He knew all about childhood traumas, goddamn them, but could there possibly be a more inconvenient one going on right now? "Both yes and no. When we were younger, we went swimming frequently, but after the accident, I discovered that she had been calling for me the entire time I had been in my room." "What were you doing?" Raiden asked, getting silence before he figured that he didn't care. It was his business. Family issues weren't going to solve his current dilemma. Never mind, she survived. But now you believe that's the reason she can't swim? "Yes, I received a letter from her mother stating that had moved them back to England. Was no longer able to swim. Maybe you can help her get over it? She wouldn't even wear a bathing suit." Well, if that were the case, they were in serious trouble because Raiden doubted that there was anywhere on the whole floor that wasn't flooded. After taking a moment to pound his head against a nearby wall, Raiden thought to himself, unless you want me to teach her how to suppress traumatic memories, I really don't know what you expect me to do. Aha, he finally deadpanned. I'm counting on you, Raiden. As everyone else seemed to be doing as well, Raiden ran out of things to say and dove back under the water, moving forward because, as Rose had previously stated, diverting his thoughts wouldn't help him solve any problems. With Naruto. Air Purification Facility, 1st floor, Shell 2 Core Building. Gazing at the electrified floor that led through a brief hallway to the automatic door at its end, Naruto remarked, I'm getting the weirdest déjà vu. I mean, it's just as useless now as it was back then, but what the hell? And Naruto leapt up, stuck to the rooftop, and proceeded to the end where he entered through the door to demonstrate that it was still as pointless as ever. Really, modern technology could never replace the flexibility and adaptability of traditional human security. A trained monkey could have found a way past that floor into the room at its end. At the very least, it would have been more difficult to get past even one sentry standing there in front of the door with a gun drawn, but that wasn't the point, and it wasn't fair either. Now he would have beaten the human guard's ass and made them look just as stupid as the inanimate electrified floor as well. Today, at least, there was one easy thing. Entering the solitary chamber with an inverted gate, Naruto descended to the ground, coming up upright, and rounded the corner to discover his target perched on the ground near the wall, appearing to be eagerly awaiting something, anything, to occur to him. President James Johnson was a solid middle-aged man with graying hair, dressed in black formal slacks, a sloppy red and yellow tie around his neck, and a sweat-soaked dress shirt with rolled sleeves. He was, all things considered, a very unspectacular and unassuming man. Now I'm going to go ahead and guess that you've never had to look someone you've screwed over in the eyes, have you? Naruto said, standing directly over him with his arms crossed. Hey douchebag, look up. After saying that, he lowered himself to Johnson's level and asked, where are your partners, now? President Johnson said, I bet you're loving this right now, aren't you, Uzumaki? In an unamused humorous tone. The prodigal son returns. With a stoic expression on his face, Naruto freely said, oh yes. Not as much as I'd like to, but I think it's appropriate. This is the fate of puppets when they become unusable, after all. He gestured with his fingers in front of the man as though he were controlling a marionette and said, they get thrown into storage somewhere. After Naruto straightened himself up again, Johnson said as he slowly rose off the ground, I'm sure there's an allusion to your own life in there somewhere. So what, pray tell, would someone like you be here for? Oh, to keep you from forking over the launch codes. You're too late for that by about 2 hours. What? I believe that as VIPs, you were expected to be trained to withstand torture. You were taken prisoner less than 10 hours ago. And you're assuming that the information was tortured out of me. That one didn't sit well with Naruto, and his eyes betrayed it. You're in on this. You are still in on all of this and you know what they are going to do. His mind raced and quickly put the pieces together, allowing him to step back and scrutinize Johnson with a more bored look in his eye. Oh. I understand. Weary of being the ultimate golfer for the Patriots. As he paced back and forth in the little area Naruto was giving him, Johnson uttered, they control it all. I assumed that Solidus wanted the same thing as me, to use the Metal Gear and its capabilities to broker a place among the Patriots, but he wants to destroy them. To eradicate all potential means of control over the nation by bringing the military and the economy to a standstill and driving them out so they could take action. Naruto gave a stiff nod, saying, and he can't just do that. During their battle underneath the entire facility, he had gotten as much from Chinaman. Not only will it ruin everything the Patriots are planning, but everything. It will destroy this country, not set it free. This isn't his first attempt at anything similar, Johnson stated, locking eyes with Naruto. At Shadow Moses 4 years ago, he sent Ocelot to sow the idea of their downfall in Liquid Snake's mind, but it didn't work out, and the Patriots removed him from his role as U.S. head of state. But before they could cover it up and get rid of him covertly, he went underground through the window of a new presidential selection. While he was leaving, you caught up with him in Lyon, but you couldn't have known then what you know now. The whole French incident flashed through Naruto's mind like a light bulb. Yeah, about that. Without warning, Naruto punched Johnson in the stomach so hard that he fell to the ground and started vomiting on the ground. I remember right after it was over with, you put me in this hell of a mess to begin with, Naruto said. I appreciate you doing that. His tone was scathing and sarcastic. Trying to save face, Johnson spat blood and bile and said, it was me trying to assert to them that I could be in control from the shadows the same as them. Putting what used to be a pet project of theirs back in our hands and gaining control of it, I thought would increase my standing with them. Since I was new to the role and its power, I reasoned that if we had you, we would have a reliable way to track down Solidus and Ocelot and eventually kill them when we caught up to them. However, it had the opposite effect. They did not want you in the vicinity of our company. Naruto saw through Johnson's attempt to strong-arm him, treating it like a corporate middle management trying to curry favor with the boss by taking initiative, but it backfired because they had no intention of keeping him around at all. And then the dead cell crap. Yes. Johnson attempted to stand again, but Naruto's blow left him sputtering helplessly on his knees. That came from them directly, not from me. Johnson said. They used half of my idea and you to get information on something significant, but not to locate and destroy Ocelot and Solidus. They deliberately kept you at a distance so that you could never retaliate. You posed a threat. That's when things started to go wrong between us. They only make use of external components. Those they haven't been able to control, when they intend to discard them after their useful life is through. Which ultimately turned out to be the tanker incident 2 years ago, Naruto concluded, gritting his teeth a little. This isn't their first scheme to eliminate you. Actually, when they received the Cypher bot photo of you there with Snake, they were shocked to learn that you were there, but it turned out to be the best way to get rid of you. Especially since their later plan to eliminate Dead Cell failed even with you not present to engage in combat. Dead Cell was therefore going to be eliminated because of him, though not in the manner that the two he had battled against had informed him. In reality, they were finished the moment the Patriots chose to keep Naruto with them. It was the kiss of death, and they would still receive it even if he had never gone to New York at Olga's request. By the time they sprung the ambush on the unit to kill them, Ocelot had gained sway with the Gerlukovich mercenaries and Solidus had gotten into Dead Cell's ear. Johnson continued, finally finding enough air in his lungs to stand back up. Informing them of the impending attack did nothing but increase their fidelity to him. And to go ahead and attack Big Shell, each of them had their army. However, there was one more thing that irritated him. For what purpose did I steal all that tech junk? On every single solo mission I was sent on, I had to kill some engineer or steal their work, inquired Naruto. Both at times. Why was I even bothering? Johnson tapped his temple theatrically. You were stealing all of those things so that our scientists could finish construction of Arsenal Gear's brain. Naruto's eye twitched at the sight of so many rays. You were stealing the starting points for scientists to create a way for Arsenal Gear to run itself through the AI within, and then some, because once it's active the AI has full access to the military's tactical network. Johnson continued, armored to the teeth with enough missiles and weaponry to pound a nearby nation into submission, stocked with mass-produced, redesigned Metal Gear rays. It will have the ability to command both our nuclear weapons and armed forces. It was to function as the nation's mobile center. At first, Naruto just looked at him, trying to process that concept. He opened his mouth to speak multiple times, but nothing came out. Instead, it was Catherine, who he was always in contact with via the codec, who was able to find something to say. Bad guys really don't fuck around when they make you do something, do they? I was scared to death about how to destroy that thing back when we found out that it was a submersible ship the size of a city that shoots nukes, she said, her voice very quiet as she considered everything. When Naruto eventually had the first question to ask, he eventually found the words to say. Why would anyone want a goddamn sentient computer to be able to do any of that? That is utterly absurd. Whether pre-programmed or not. Skynet. I know, am I right? That weapon is the dumbest thing ever invented. Johnson dismissed Naruto's one-man chat with his sister and himself, saying, you're thinking too small, even though he wasn't even there to hear the main points of their exchange. That kind of thing is more capable. It will create total dominance over the world. All digital communication channels will be under the AIGW's authority, and this includes the capacity to filter content on the internet. They're free to reshape the information stream as they see fit. Then Naruto remembered his final discussion about the previous assassination he had been ordered to carry out prior to the tanker incident with Colonel Jackson at Guantanamo Bay. The man you killed had developed a program that, when combined with another primary computer program, could detect anomalies or unwanted defects in the primary program, such as coding errors or human error. It was designed to help with software device beta testing and to be the best debugging tool available. After all of the information was presented to him, it only took him a few seconds to figure out what Arsenal Gear's AI had managed to mash together in his head, along with everything else he remembered being scheduled to take. No, Naruto repeated as he began to circle around, gripping his hair. No, 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 finally having enough. He punched a nearby electric control panel and busted it. Sparks and jets of electricity flying everywhere. Fuck. Johnson speculated that Naruto must have had some strange superpower because he couldn't have turned off the electricity without touching high voltage. "I see you're aware that you basically did their grocery shopping for them," Johnson said, wondering how the youngster avoided electrocuting himself. Once more, there was no way to know what you were doing given the information you had, or didn't have in this instance. But the Patriots will have the upper hand once GW is completely incorporated into Arsenal Gear's system and fully functional. Naruto looked down at his scuffed-up suit-covered right hand and willed himself to calm down. He was literally starting to see red, and that never went well for him. "I thought the debug thing was to defeat hackers so the NSA thing that happened in 2000 never happened again. None of your predecessors would have attempted anything as ambitious as this, nor would you. Boy, it's all in the DNA. You are familiar with both Liquid and Solid Snake. You are aware that they are both clones made from Big Boss's genes that are genetically similar." Naruto nodded, pointing to a third. "One that resembles Big Boss more perfectly than the other two. Solidus was the third clone involved. So he was the Patriots' homegrown pet president? Solidus clearly thought bigger than either Liquid or Solid Snake, and with those genes had to come the ambition to dream big, just like Big Boss and his outer heaven. Neither Liquid nor Solid Snake had ever been the kind of people to settle for anything less than exactly what they wanted, and that had never been anything small." Naruto turned around and moaned, "Great." He then made a hand motion to indicate that he should stay near. "I have to get you to leave. Since you're to blame for over 80% of the issues I'm currently facing, I'm going to beat the shit out of you later, but for now I'm too busy trying to save the goddamn world to vent on you." When Johnson learned that Naruto was genuinely trying to help him leave, his eyes widened, but he quickly covered them with a shake of his head and said, "That's not an option, son. Getting me out of here doesn't solve anything, and it doesn't benefit anyone. The best case scenario for me leaving here is that Arsenal Gear is somehow halted. I still will be killed by the Patriots. The worst case scenario is that I pass away, Arsenal Gear activates, and you fail." Well, it wasn't exactly joyful. Turning to face him, Naruto's expression was serious and detached, saying, "I apologize, but I'm at a loss for ideas. That is, unless you want me to murder you right away to spare the trouble for everyone else who might do the same later. Could you? Alright, he wasn't expecting that. If I asked, would you kill me right now? He sighed and said, "They've probably already opened the briefcase and obtained the codes, and even if they didn't they don't need a full launch to use the bomb. I know I'm in no position to ask anything of you, but I want the freedom to at least make one choice in my political career that was my own. So please, do whatever you see fit to punish me for treason. You are my executioner because I am the one who destroyed your life." He really didn't see any of this coming at all, I promise you. For a full 4 years, he had genuinely dreamed of taking Johnson's head, even though the fantasies were incredibly violent and frequently descended into night terrors in which he or his loved ones were the victims of horrific events. A new US president wanted to prove to his bosses that he was a problem solver, and he used Naruto to illustrate it. All of this culminated in Naruto being spit out by the system and cast away with nothing to show for it. The reason he had to leave Johnny, Meryl, Wolf, and even Olga too back when he was finally beginning to feel like he'd found a place for himself was standing before him. 4 years of fighting wars he didn't want to start and bleeding. It took him 2 years to figure out who was watching him, and another 2 years to figure out if someone was going to kill him, his sister, or even Snake and Otakon. After 4 years apart from his friends he had made in the fire, he still had faith in them at that very moment. "Every single part of me is screaming at me to run you through with the sword," Naruto said, his fists trembling and his fingers twitching at his sides as he gave Johnson a hateful look. "I want to kill you so much right now. To mash your brains together with your skull using a Rasengan. To electrocute you as though you were fastened to a chair." Johnson nodded, closed his eyes, and waited for whatever fate had been predestined for him. Ideally, nothing more complicated than a bullet to the head. He took a deep breath when he heard steel emerge from its sheath. Naruto was going to use his sword to defeat him, and he succeeded. Using the flat side of the HF blade, Naruto proceeded to backhand President James Johnson across the face as hard as he could. It definitely drew blood, a lot of blood, and in the process, it completely destroyed his face, leaving him with a broken nose, busted teeth, fractured jaw, cracked orbital bone, and a thick, nasty cut across his cheek from the dull side of the weapon. "I'm not going to play executioner asshole because you say so," Naruto yelled at him from above as Johnson squirmed on the ground, blood oozing from all the wrong places. "I always wondered what I'd do if I ever got the chance, and you basically took whatever sick, perverse pleasure I might have gotten out of it by basically telling me you want to die," Naruto said, horrified. "You find that to be far too simple." He grabbed Johnson by the collar and yanked him hard against the distant wall while maintaining his grip. Blood gushed down Johnson's face and his breathing became labored, but he managed to utter, "What are you talking about?" Johnson was able to push through. "No, you're going to survive this," Naruto emphasized, giving a firm shake. "It's too easy. You will take responsibility for this until the day comes if we don't succeed. You will have to live with it if we are successful, which we will be. You'll get those teeth replaced, your face will likely heal from the scar as best it can, and the swelling will go down, but even before the Patriots send someone to remove the prosthetic, you'll always remember that the guy you screwed to the wall on April 17, 2005, saved the fucking world." "Why?" Johnson questioned, able to see Naruto with his remaining unswollen eye. "Because no matter what I do, you're still a dead man even if we win and I don't kill you. I also want you to think these last words to yourself when they finally send an assassin to kill you. You are not killing me. Since April 29, 2009, when I, James Johnson, the 44th President of the United States of America, gave my life to Naruto Uzumaki, I have essentially been dead." After releasing his fury that had been building for more than 4 years, Naruto fell silent and fixed his gaze on the offender, making him gasp violently and open his eyes wide. Glancing down, Naruto saw the tip of an HF blade protruding from his chest, through the man's back, and through the metal wall behind him. He had been stabbed through the wall by someone. With Johnson's life dwindling, Naruto swiftly drew his own sword and engaged the high vibration effect, allowing him to use his raw strength to cut cleanly through the somewhat thick metal wall and out the other side, whereupon he confronted the person who had impaled the former president. Old Boy was killed by the new cyborg ninja after Naruto had vanquished him. "You have this terrible habit of showing up when I'm taking care of personal matters." Holding up his own sword, Naruto remarked, "At least I wasn't doing anything important when Gray Fox jumped me at Shadow Moses. Act. You. Desire?" Instead of saying anything to him, the ninja charged at him again, swinging the sword, and when Naruto blocked, he was thrust into a strength test, staring intently through the helmet's one-sided visor. This made him wonder. Who was this person, and why did they seem to be interested in him? And why did they attack him twice after only exchanging words with him the first time? Could it be a Patriot assassin, since they had already killed Johnson? Before the actual fight could start, a number of guards emerged from around the far end of the hall, pointing their weapons at them both and yelling in Russian, "The second intruder, the ninja from the conference room, let loose." Naruto and the ninja parted ways, with Naruto using his sword to deflect bullets until one nicked his shoulder and the ninja taking cover behind the room that Naruto had just sliced through. He was set up to escape by the back by that coward. No, not tonight. Taking aim with the solar gun on the other arm of his armor, Naruto fired a burst of light that deflected the gunfire enough to allow him to follow the cyborg ninja's trail and exit the core via the opposite route. Beyond Shell 2 rooftop Strut I. The bridge was unstable and Strut I seemed as though it could come down at any time with its creaking and grumbling, and no patrol would even attempt to go that way, more worried about the person they managed to get a face to in Naruto than the mysterious figure in the combat suit. A colorful figure clad in state-of-the-art cybernetic armor scaled the side of the strut as if it were flat ground before coming to a stop atop it. Though it didn't want to, the cyborg ninja had to go. Even though it was disgusting, every little bit helped with the Patriots, so that was a great opportunity to face off against Naruto and complete the secondary mission that it needed to obtain some leverage or decent favor with them. How could it do such a thing to people that, however, the one thing it refused to do was kill more Gurlukovich mercenaries than it needed to in order to accomplish its missions. It made no difference now. Obsessing over something like this diverted attention from the prize, and this prize was too significant to overlook. Referring to things to overlook, the ninja never saw the high-speed object that slammed directly into its back, nearly with the force of a small car. The thick artificial exoskeletal body was knocked across the rooftop into the side of one of the water vats up there on the roof, and it only avoided the modern sword blade that nearly ran it through because the suit's proximity sensors gave a warning. Getting jumped from behind isn't exactly fun, is it? Alright, so it was showtime at last, for good. Pulling his sword across the metal rooftop, Naruto said, "No, you don't get to cut and run like that." He was approaching the cyborg ninja slowly in the blazing sunset, saying, "Letting a sleeping dog lie will just get you bitten on the ass later, so if you've got a problem with me, let's settle up now." In a machine-altered voice, the ninja said, "If you insist." It then picked up a nearby sword that had fallen near it during Naruto's surprise attack. "Let us settle this once and for all, Uzumaki." Naruto prepared for battle by taking up his self-trained sword stance, but something was bothering him. "What did I do to you to get you to come after me?" Once and for all? He thought to himself. Which ghost from your past are you dealing with today? It seems like I'm dealing with ghosts from my past. The ninja had Naruto's undivided attention as he stood perfectly upright, seemingly staring up at him before raising a hand to the helmet and flipping latches around the neck that came loose with audible snaps and hisses. Good. Even the sword fell out of his hand. Naruto could only imagine the look on the ninja's face when the helmet came off. He could feel his own muscles coil in surprise. Gaping like a fish couldn't possibly describe accurately enough the expression that he held. It felt like an eternity ago that he had last seen the scar that he had inflicted upon that face several years prior. It had been a long time since he had seen that hair so fair that it was almost white. Naruto said, "Olga," so softly that he wasn't sure if he had actually said anything at all. Not a trace of anger, not of joy, not of relief at seeing him in person for the first time in 2 years. Not even of a sly smile from having made him believe she had been the enemy. This was no, just kidding, situation. She looked very serious. Not her usual serious. There had always been a hint of playfulness between them, even during their serious moments together, even during battles and when they were trying to outdo each other. Her steel blue eyes, though, were filled with pain. There was a desperate gleam in them. Olga warned him in a low voice, brandishing her sword as her expression changed from emotionless to a strained scowl. "Don't you look at me like that, Uzumaki." "I hope you're kidding," Naruto thought to himself. He attempted a disarming laugh, but nothing came out, and he doubted that his expression changed from the shock he knew was there. "This is your idea of a joke, right?" he thought to himself. "Even after all of this time, even though you know that I'm the same person that tried to kill you twice today, I can still see it when you look at me, past the surprise and the hurt. Tell me a story that will make all of this clear. Tell me a lie, please. Anything." Olga closed her eyes and gave a frantic shake of her head, saying, "You still had warmth in your eyes when you saw my face behind the visor. Don't you look at me with those fond eyes." She yelled into the resounding open air before blurting at an unready Naruto. "Aniki, get up." April 29, 2009. Big Shell. Shell 2 Strut I, New York, 20 miles off the coast of Manhattan. Naruto. Age 22. Naruto experienced a severe detachment from his surroundings. It felt like he was watching himself and everything around him from the outside, not even inside his own body. It was as if he was submerged in a warm bath, and he was unable to figure out what was going on because of his brain. It was not a dream, though, it was authentic. Olga was actually wearing that outfit. Olga was truly approaching him at a speed he had never imagined her capable of. Aniki move. This implied that the sword she was brandishing to slay him with was genuine as well. For heaven's sake. After dodging several blows from the sword and narrowly avoiding a stab that would have transformed him into a ninja kebab, Naruto rolled beneath one and recovered his own HF blade from the ground to protect himself. Despite his best efforts, he was unable to change the look in his icy cold eyes. He was unable to harden his heart to take her life. Not by her. Not even the will to raise the arm holding the sword to threaten his apparent adversary. "So, I'm assuming that you're choosing to take me out to get your baby back instead of going through with whatever mystery mission the Patriots wanted you to do," he said, trying to get something out of her with a gulp. "What is happening at the Big Shell is the mission that they want me to do." Olga spoke with a strained tone. "I'm certain that our mutual comrades let you know about at least one of those things, which begs the question that I need to ask. Why did you remain here even after knowing all of that?" Naruto said, still not quite believing that it was her body behind the armor. "I wanted to help you. I wanted to find out if you were okay. To talk to you." He opened his mouth to say that he was just wanting to see her, but the voice of reason in the back of his mind told him to stop talking. This was not the moment to try and rile her up. Olga asked again, her tone bitingly elevated, "You wanted to find out if I was okay?" Naruto nodded, and she produced the same gun she had used to kill Old Boy earlier that day. But before she could take out the safety, Naruto was quick enough to move and kicked her hand to aim the gun upward. 3 shots were fired, but missed because Naruto grabbed her gun wrist and used his other hand to block her HF blade. Olga backflipped to avoid Naruto by kneeing his opposing legs in step and throwing off his equilibrium. Upon landing, she aimed her gun at him again, but Naruto surprised her by throwing a shuriken, which diverted her attention for a brief moment. This allowed him to fire when she was too close, preventing her from taking a good aim. After forcing her to drop the gun with a blow to the dull side of his sword, Naruto was met with an attempt by Olga to sever his arm in two. Olga tried to grab her gun again after several failed attempts to separate Naruto from her, but Naruto sprinted over and kicked the gun farther away than she could have possibly gone with him right next to her. She failed to remember how incredibly skilled he could be at controlling the flow of battles and getting what he wanted out of them. She was without a gun now. He was still on the ground after his sliding kick, but she still had a sword. However, Naruto did possess a gun. He had left his MP5 with Otacon and Snake, so he was down to 2 guns right now. He wears the solar gun on his right wrist and a USP at his hip. Olga ducked behind the numerous vats and air filtration systems on the roof to escape the rapid-fire shots Naruto fired at her with his wrist-mounted special weapon, saying, "PSSHT. You'd be better off using regular bullets from a regular gun. Those shots are slow in comparison." Naruto remarked, keeping his focus on the last spot. He saw Olga run for cover behind him like a hawk. "I can't kill you from hitting you with them alone. Solar gunshots aren't as fatal as regular bullets. I'm touched that you're sacrificing speed for non-lethality," she uttered while projecting empathy. "You will be." Naruto then raised the gun and fired a large bolt straight up into the air. He could waste energy in this way for specific benefits he could come up with as long as the sun was out. Once the shot reached a sufficient altitude, it burst like a flare above the strut, leaving a large shadow on the ground below. Naruto swiftly leapt into the air to pounce on Olga after spotting her silhouette behind the specific cover she was using thanks to that shadow. Olga saw Naruto's shadow on the metal rooftop beneath her and turned in time to be kicked hard in the face just as the flare burst in the air above. She cursed and realized exactly what Naruto had done. For sure, he still had one hell of a boot on him. It was her responsibility to replace the helmet mask. She was thrown to the ground, and until she stopped herself, her body rolled like a carpet. When she stood back up, Naruto's hand was still holding her by the face, causing her to groan in agony. Naruto's hand was clamped around her mouth as she was abruptly thrown back to the ground, saying, "Listen to me, I want to talk to you." Olga's helmet re-emerged over her head, forcing Naruto to release his grip long enough for her to kick him off and get back up. "There's nothing to talk about," she exclaimed as she watched Naruto roll forward and rise again, sword in hand. She attempted to cut him with her own, but it was blocked. "I'm trying to kill you, so stop asking questions and fight." With a sly chuckle, Naruto dashed ahead, his HF blade lowered for a vertical thrust. When he swung the weapon at Olga, the sharply vibrating blade sliced through the metal roof as if it were not there, grazing her chest and leaving a deep scratch on the cybernetic armor. Naruto twisted the weapon in his hands, sending electricity through it, and threw it directly at Olga, forcing her to dodge it as it tore through the wall a short distance behind her. "Okay, she's not as strong as Gray Fox, but still," Naruto thought to himself. "I trained my ass off to be this strong, and she's holding me back?" She was forced to block a punch aimed at her head, followed by another one with his other arm. Bullshit. Olga's suit gave her superhuman strength, but Naruto's training gave him superhuman strength as well, and his own suit gave his pre-existing muscles new life. Naruto made an effort to knock Olga off balance and neutralize her, standing by slamming his knee into her inner leg. He began to accelerate, forcing her backward into a wall at the top of the strut. A wall that collapsed because it was already weakened by Solidus Metal Gear Ray Rampage and Fat Man's bombing attacks, even before Naruto's HF blade tore through it like paper. On the ground, the two combatants separated from one another. Olga's helmet had opened again, revealing soot and debris all over it, and Naruto's yellow hair was covered in both. Even as she turned to face him once more, she could see the intense glow in his blue eyes. He could never keep a secret from anyone who knew him with eyes like that. His weakness was those eyes. His eyes were genuinely the windows to his soul, as those who knew him well enough could read his emotions simply by observing the gleam in them. His face appeared to be in battle mode, frozen in a stony mask of concentration, but he couldn't pretend or hide the partiality in the way his eyes were still fixed on her. She felt so exposed. Right then, she would have felt better about anything he could have done. He could have used his powerful rosin device, shot her, electrocuted her, made clones of herself so he could outnumber her, or any combination of these methods. However, he didn't. He wasn't trying to lose, and he wasn't fighting to win. It was obvious that he was acting in this way in an attempt to calm her down. Anger shot through her. "I told you not to look at me like that," she exclaimed. She chose not to use her sword, so when she dropped it and punched at Naruto, she clearly surprised him. He spun around in the dark, impotent room of apparent storage they had broken themselves into, startled by the utterly baseless action that actually struck him in the face and sent him flying into a nearby wall. Naruto shook his head, spat blood on the ground, and returned her gaze with a lifeless expression rather than his previous battle-focused one. Naruto stood squarely against the wall and merely extended his arms to the side, saying, "You know why I do." After taking a sniff, perhaps to clear his nose after the blow. Olga said to herself, "I hate you," but Naruto could hear her perfectly well in the room. "Uh-huh. Really?" Naruto exclaimed, cracking his neck to the side and opening his arms wide. "I hate you. Come on." Olga walked forward slowly, chanting to herself, "I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you," she exclaimed as her legs began to move faster with each word, until finally she was running in his direction. Naruto embraced her as soon as she was close enough, acting as though she wasn't his deadly and extremely destructive enemy. She fought valiantly against what anyone witnessing it could only perceive as a hug. Even a consoling hug. After a few moments, Olga freed her arms and proceeded to punish his body by landing hard punches to both sides until she found the sweet spot and nailed his kidneys on both sides. If Gray Fox had struck him with his fists, there would have been 2 holes where they had been. It was fortunate that it was only a suit rather than total cybernetic improvements. The scarred Russian beauty's arms dropped to her sides as Naruto coughed up blood but didn't let go, taking punch after punch until they began to slack off. "You son of a bitch. I hate you. You killed my father," Naruto said. Naruto continued to hold onto her and whispered, "You know I didn't," into her hair. Olga cried out at him, "I know you didn't," her eyes glistening like a dam about to burst as she declared, "You promised me you wouldn't kill any of my men, and you kept that promise. Even now you're keeping it." None of the Gurlukovich mercenaries that were occupying Big Shell were killed by him. With extreme prejudice, he killed Chinaman and decimated the Fallschirmjäger, but he also seemed to take great care not to kill her soldiers. When she begged him not to kill her father in cold blood, he refused, grunting, even when doing so would have made it easier to continue breaking into Big Shell. The only thing about his personality that had remained stable since the night he'd smuggled Johnny, Meryl, and Wolf to her and her unit in Russia was his strength of will and character. She would not break his will, even though the entire world could strike him with as many body blows as they wanted, just as she did, until he was pale and sputtering blood. Because he had never called, she wanted to persuade herself that the lie Ocelot had told her men about Naruto killing her father Sergei was true. After the cursed tanker incident, he had never again revealed his face to her. She attempted to persuade herself that it was a sign of cowardice. She knew and had always known that such had never been the case, but he couldn't look her in the eye, so maybe he had something to hide. That's what she had been holding onto to help her swallow the bitter pill of killing him. However, she was never persuaded to believe the thin wall of lies. Her entire body shook. She had already lost her unbreakable will, and for God's love, the person she needed to kill was giving her physical comfort. What sort of twisted and sick irony was this? Even after she pushed Naruto up against the wall, he remained unfazed. She raised her fist to press his head against the metal wall, but he made no move. And then, at last, she began to punch. Olga repeatedly punched, yelling, "I hate you," and exclaiming, why, I need to kill you. You know I do." Instead of hitting Naruto at all, each punch she delivered crushed the metal wall next to his head until her fist forced a hole right through it. Once more, Naruto said without flinching, "I know. For your baby." This was her baby, whom she had never even held or seen, but she had known for some time. "Why don't you run?" Olga begged him frantically. "Why don't you fight back to kill? This is how it was always supposed to go, wasn't it? We met in battle as enemies, so it has to end that way too, right? Right. Why won't you defend yourself? I came here for you. Not for anything else. I don't care about this country. I never really did. How can I care about fighting for some faceless machine that doesn't even know who I am or what makes me the person I am? I care about the people that care about me. I do what I do for them, and that's that," Naruto said, staring at her for a long time before mentally summoning the words he wanted to say. Being patriotic was simple in Konoha. Love the village and everything about it is so ridiculously simple. The hidden villages could have easily passed for family when compared to the characteristics he had discovered as characteristic of this world. Fighting for the people around him seemed to be the only cause worth fighting for, so he was unable to identify with it beyond that. That remained constant. The only thing that changed were the increasingly dire circumstances and intensity of the fighting. "What matters to me is what all of this is doing to all the people I care about, especially you," Naruto said, trying to explain as he stood closer to Olga than he had in over 2 years. "I don't care if Solidus wins, or if the Patriots keep doing their damn thing. What does any of that have to do with me?" he responded. That's what some would refer to as selflessness. Hell, it would be considered selfless by those close to him, who he was truly helping. No, it wasn't. That much was known to Naruto. Had he been selfless, he would have taken her life. At any cost to himself, he would have eliminated everyone standing in his way in order to save the nation's status. As it were, for the greater good. No, he came to Big Shell with nothing but self-interest in mind. He wouldn't hide his thoughts about his own behavior or offer an apology if someone were to ask. The mercenary princess questioned, "Why me? Are you a fool? I've told you since the day we met that I'll kill you one day in battle. You already know the answer to that. You're not so stupid that you don't know why. Don't be Tsunere about it." Naruto moaned, raising an eyebrow and turning off his codec and the built-in camera in his suit to give them true privacy. She said, a little sour about not knowing the term, that word again. "I don't know what that implies." "It doesn't matter now," Naruto replied with a head shake and a deeply sorrowful grin. "I've been thinking about it every day since I found out from the others that you have to kill me for that baby, and I've been weighing my life against the life of a child I don't know, I've never met, and am never going to see. I made my decision a while ago, but I've just had a lot of time to really think it over." "Uzumaki, what are you saying to me?" Olga backed up a few steps, a very serious expression on her grimy face. It appeared as though she was waiting for a specific response, and if it turned out to be the one she was fully expecting, then woe be to him. "I'm saying I make more problems than I seem to fix. I've somehow hurt every single person that's ever bothered to learn my name since the day I turned up in Alaska. Every ounce of good I've ever done seems to be grayer than anything else. And I made a choice. A decision he never discussed with anyone. No one else he really spent any real time with would have understood or approved of his actions, and he'd seen it in his nightmares enough times already to come to terms with it. If you really have to, I don't have a problem dying if it'll." Naruto staggered slightly and dabbed at his wound before glaring at her. "You're going to give yourself for me? Lay yourself down at the altar as a sacrifice." Olga forearmed him stiffly in the face, drawing blood from the bridge of his nose. "Shut up. I don't want to hear that out of you. Not from you." She desired to hit him once more. She was so tempted to hit him again. She found it annoying how casually he said something like that. Although it was his decision, it was the wrong one, and he shouldn't have made it in front of her. Naruto growled, "And don't you want to kill me anyway? So just do it," he added. "I haven't made a choice that I've felt as mine alone in 4 years. I won't. Not like this," she roared. "My primary mission for them here is not to kill you. It was a failsafe to ensure that they got something out of me if I declined the true mission. If I can succeed with my actual purpose, they'll keep her alive." With no idea what was going on, Naruto asked, "What primary mission?" He stopped talking and became very wide-eyed. "You're with Solidus and Dead Cell. That's the exact opposite of what the jerks that are blackmailing you would." Indeed, she was a charming little double agent, son of a bitch. Observing that he had grasped the salient aspect of the required argument, Olga went on, "I have to make sure that Operative Raiden survives and that his mission to stop Solidus is successful." With a glare in his eyes that had been vacant moments before, Naruto punched into his own palm and said, "Fuck that, give me a blunt object and show me where Solidus is. I'll beat him to death. That'll stop it." "That's not what they want," Olga replied. "They want him to do it, and they want me to assist as support from the shadows. To help him along and get him past things he otherwise wouldn't be able to breach without help. To do that they needed someone inside. I don't want to believe that all of this has been laid out since 2007, but why? Did it really matter who killed Solidus, as long as the task was completed? I don't know. What can I do? Stay out of the way." Olga replied with a grin on her face. "I don't know how you found out about this. You must have an entire team of hackers at your beck and call if you managed to learn as much as you did to get here." Naruto interrupted, trying to wiggle his nose bridge in case it was broken, saying, "We just have two actually." He looked at the blood on his suit-covered fingertips and let go of his nose, thankful that it wasn't. "Just saying. It was a lot of legwork first to get some keywords, and I got my ass beaten in Africa to get them. Bitch. I didn't say anything about elbowing me in the face," he said, pointing to the blood on his fingers. So unnecessary was the interruption. Good heavens, did her sincere lack of awareness of how incredibly irritating he was make her a sick person? It had to, Olga continued, but even so, no one else can finish this fight. Naruto asked, how the hell would they know that he didn't do it himself? Before becoming motionless and turning to face her, Olga, say, patriots, she said, not revealing the name of the group that had been harming her since they had started talking. Naruto was annoyed as he palmed the metal plate on his headband. "Lali lulalo," Olga began to say, but then lowered her head and swore angrily in Russian. "Nanomachines. Wait, why can you say it? You were in Foxhound at some point, weren't you? And Dead Cell?" Naruto asked. To use the cyborg ninja suit that had been intended exclusively for her, she needed to have nanomachines injected into her. They accelerated her recovery from injuries and stimulated her muscles, which were already strengthened by rigorous training and further enhanced by the suit. Among other things, they let her remotely hack into terminals and use a codec without having to speak. She didn't want it at first, but she eventually saw the benefits since it improved her skills and seemed necessary to complete her mission while posing as the cyborg ninja. It is unlikely that Naruto could have genuinely implied that he prevented them from gaining internal control over him during his nearly 5-year employment with them. They would have forced him to take shots at some point. Vaccinations for deployments to any location in the world, or any other reason they could think of to justify injecting him with medication. However, he had been hinting at precisely that. "I made clones do all of my checkups in Foxhound and Dead Cell. Never took a single injection myself." His foolish habit had become somewhat fruitful due to the rampant paranoia that had gripped him after the horrific experiments conducted by Dr. Clark. "Oobliudok motherfucker. Oi. Language. You're someone's goddamn parent, you know." That essentially meant that both she and the Raiden guy were constantly under Patriot observation. For one very clear and obvious reason, of course, he cared far less about the latter than the former. Forget about that. Noble death, nonsense. He was furious once more, and the only thing he could do was start solving some fucking problems. Olga questioned, clearly feeling a little empty after everything that had happened. "So now what?" she asked. She might have experienced the most intense emotional roller coaster of her life during the past 30 minutes. This time, there was not going to be much hiding under a mask of irritated indifference. She was clearly shaken. "You tell me," Naruto responded. "What were you about to go and do if you didn't decide to play deathmatch with me?" As Olga approached him, the idea crossed her mind to raise her hand, trace his face with her fingers, dab at the cuts she'd made, and touch the distinctive marks on his cheeks. However, she didn't take any of those actions. Her expression didn't even hint at the seriousness she needed to project. Her tough upbringing produced an amazing poker face. "It is almost time to activate arsenal gear. Boarding of the men is in progress as we speak," Olga continued. "Operative Raiden will need to be on board the vessel by that time or it is all over." Nothing more needed to be said. It was obvious what would end. "And how are you supposed to get him on?" Naruto inquired inquisitively, considering the circumstances surrounding Olga's child's life and the state of the eastern United States, to put it mildly. "The only way on is in the second basement floor of Core 1, but it's so heavily guarded and access is extremely restricted. Ocelot, Solidus, and I are the only ones that can get in aside from the handful of officers that are allowed only so that they can direct the soldiers down into the ship. Later on, there would be time to fret over that. Prior to considering how to trick the adversaries, they had to first put themselves in a position to succeed." Naruto turned his back on Olga and said, "Okay, just be quiet for a bit." He then turned on the camera that was part of his suit and his codec again. He already had a call ringing in his ear, so he knew he was going to get his ass chewed out for having them off. "What the hell, Aniki? Why'd you turn your gear off in the middle of a fight?" Before getting down to business, Naruto responded to his younger sister, "This isn't pay-per-view, kitty, this was personal. I can turn this shit off anytime I want. You're lucky I let you watch the Chinaman fight. Anyway, where the hell is Raiden?" he asked. "HMPH, Catherine muttered, not happy. The reason he turned around was that he knew he would get an earful from her if she discovered that the cyborg ninja Olga was still there. "Raiden's in Shell 2, Strut L, and he's got Otakon's not sister with him too." "What do you want?" he said. Naruto said, "Patch him through for me." After a short while, Naruto heard a young, close-talking voice on the other end of the line ask, "Yeah. Raiden here, what's the matter?" When Raiden finally succeeded in getting the young genius programmer back, Naruto remarked, "You've got Emma." He actually seemed happy for Raiden. "You're gonna be Otakon's best friend when you get her to where she needs to be." "Yes, that was convenient. Yeah, she already told me." The server room in Core 1's second basement. Since he hadn't entered Core 1, Naruto wasn't familiar with its interior design. "Do you have the president?" he asked. I should have known better than to ask. Many things have happened. That means he's dead, doesn't it? Olga gave a light-hearted scoff, and Naruto turned to glare at her, but luckily it didn't get through over the line. Let me just say first that there was no way that it could have been avoided, Naruto said, walking back out into the sunset on top of the ruined strut that he and Olga had been fighting on and in. He gave up the codes to Solidus willingly anyway, so even if he didn't die here he'd be getting it for treason later. That's true enough, I guess. So how are we supposed to get back to the Shell 1 core? The bridge linking the shells is out if you remember, and I'm pretty sure that Emma can't jump like we can if I had to hold her hand just to swim her through the bottom levels. Thwack. Ow. You know it's true. That presented a challenge. Hello. You were with the president, weren't you, whoever you are? Did he have anything on him? Raiden asked, breaking the ice for a moment as it appeared that she was listening to something Emma was saying. Some disc he gave me when he was talking about the AI arsenal gear is supposed to have in it. Yes. Alright, once we get back to the server room we can make this work. At this point, Olga was using her own codec connection to listen in as well, building on Naruto's even though she didn't try to interrupt, asking, what is it supposed to be? He really just threw it at me while he was telling me what I did. He didn't explain it. I'll explain it once we get there. How are we supposed to get there? The bridge was out once more. Naruto was about to propose that they utilize the Big Shell facility's conveyor system, but just to be clear, the bridge was closed. This indicated that the pipes leading to every location in Shell 2, where they were all located, were broken. Naruto did have one more quick solution, though it wasn't particularly covert. The incompetent little cipher robots would quickly figure out what was going on. However, they were protected by the most formidable sharpshooter on the planet, who was holed up somewhere on Big Shell. Get to a roof. I've got an idea and I'll get you some cover to pull it off, alright? How can I trust you? Raiden here might, but I don't even know your name. Talk to my sister. You're her age. She'll guide you through what you need to do. I need to get you guys set up to go. Kitty, you're on. Gotcha, Aniki. Don't worry, I've got this. Congratulations, girl. Olga put a hand on Naruto's shoulder and stopped him in his tracks, saying, I've already told Wolf to find a good position to watch over the bridge area. There was no need to waste time getting him to go over there when they needed to go there as well. Not that we need it to return, but what exactly was your plan for Raiden and the girl? Oluto said. Naruto walked back outside into the light. Oh, I thought you told me to stay out of the fucking way. Since when do you get included in the planning process? He asked. Even after going silent for 2 years, Olga seemed to be up to the challenge of verbally sparring with Naruto, saying, since you're using my sniper to cover your little flying toy. I just loaned her services to you out of the goodness of my heart. Naruto glibly reasoned, Wolf was my sniper first, for 4 years. Although Olga technically had her longer than Naruto did, she walked past him and said, and now I'm loaning her services to you out of the goodness of my heart. With a sidelong glance at Naruto, she added, I should be killing you as a contingency plan, but I love me, could use your help, you ass. Oh, Naruto stammered out, trying not to show that he was a little let down as Olga walked by him to retrieve her gun from the place where she had dropped it. With Shell 2 strut L, Raiden. Running beneath the buildings in the water to get around the oil fence was the only other plan Raiden could think of to get from Shell 2 to Shell 1. Not the best plan for being cunning, especially since he was accompanied by a girl who was utterly untrained. A small young woman with brown hair pulled back into a high ponytail and holding 2 chopsticks trailed behind Raiden as they ascended the stairwell that led to the roof. I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm not a big fan of heights, whatever it is we're about to do. She started to say, wearing a pink and black t-shirt, black shorts, pink shoes, and glasses. Shaking his head, Raiden remarked, swimming, bugs, and heights. He then began looking around for guards stationed on the roofs. None were present. As the day wore on, the number of Gurlukovich mercenaries circling Big Shell had been steadily decreasing. Typically, the opposite was anticipated to occur. Patrols were supposed to get more intense as the sun began to set, with the directive, Emma, if you're afraid of anything else, you might as well get it out now because we're probably going to run into it. Through his binoculars, he could only make out a tiny patch of soldiers, but those dumb flying robot drones that had previously only been present in small numbers were making up the difference. The girl with him, however, was focused on the blazing sunset that was saturating the entire facility and ocean in an orange hue, rather than considering the potential risks of their current situation, even the one that she was supposed to be afraid of. Even at that moment, the facility, which was a complete eyesore, appeared stunning. Despite the day's events leaving it partially destroyed, there was still a semblance of tranquility there. She didn't sound like the kind of person to be involved in any kind of operation like this at all, but her youthful voice called out to them both from their separate thoughts, "Are you two on the roof of the strut yet? Your ride is almost there. I had to keep it on the Manhattan shore. Aniki said it'd be more bad than good to have with him, but I kept it as close as I could anyway, just in case." She came across as far too casual to run support for anything like this. Raiden questioned, "Kept what?" Before receiving his response, they were startled to see, precisely in front of them, a hovering board of all things. "You're kidding. What the hell is this?" they thought to themselves. This is the platform board. It's an old bit of Foxhound R&D that Aniki managed to keep with him after the whole Shadow Moses mess. It's totally stable enough to get you both to where you want to go, so hop on. Emma pointed at the strange board and said, "This thing seems super dangerous." Even though it was clearly large enough to accommodate them both, she was not at all inclined to trust it. That item would be the only thing preventing them from collapsing and perishing since they were nearly 200 feet in the air. "How are we supposed to fly it?" a board asked. Raiden had been relatively quiet up until that point, and Catherine's last comment, "Oh, you'd better not say you can. Don't tell me you can fly this thing," caused her to turn her attention to him. "I'm flying it remotely. There's no way either of you would know how to do it." "I can't fly it," Raiden said with a sigh. "I underwent VR training for it, but it was a failed program. It's impossible to operate. It goes too fast for your feet to safely remain attached to, and using your feet is the only way you can steer it, so you can't use it." It was regrettable as well. He found it annoying that the most exciting part of his training, which he could not use in the field or in virtual reality, was now directly in front of him. In any case, without another pilot, how could Naruto even use it? He was unable to remain standing on it. Oh, and that's when he realized Naruto could adhere to objects. "Bastard. Just take a seat or lay down on it or something and I'll steer you where you need to go. It's a pretty smooth ride if I keep it level." Raiden decided to take a seat at the head of the board, just in case, and kept an M4 in his hand. Emma, though, expressed some reluctance about the situation, asking, "Wait, are you sure there's no other way?" She knew it was probably hard to listen to some random girl's voice and have to follow her instructions, but there wasn't much she could do about that. "I promise I know what I'm doing. Please just trust me," Catherine said. "Well, look for yourself. The connecting bridge between the shells is out. So unless you want to go down to the oil fence and play gymnast balancing on the pontoons, I'd say that this is your best bet." Unlike Raiden, who generally felt the opposite way upon hearing the voice of a girl so close in age, Emma was, for some reason, inspired to trust her. It had to be done, even though she still didn't like spending time on a damn board hundreds of feet over the water. Emma whined a little and crawled onto the board, putting her arms around it as tightly as she could. Then, she exhaled deeply and said, "Okay, I think I'm ready to go." "All right," Catherine said, "I'll take it nice and slow. No need to scare the hell out of you any more than this already is probably." And with that, the platform board began to accelerate gradually in the direction they needed to go. It ran so quietly that it was amazing. It just made a low hum that you wouldn't notice unless you were standing next to it. It said something like, "Don't want to risk you guys losing your balance either." They were moving pretty damn quickly, even though she had said they wouldn't be moving very quickly. With no windshield or obstructions in the way, 20 miles per hour was quite rapid. Because he was stronger than Emma, Raiden found it easier, but he was still quite fond of the experience. Despite his persistent efforts, he was not receiving a response when he tried to call Snake. Growling to himself, he continued to monitor everything that might be dangerously close to him. He readjusted his codec frequency and communicated with his own support staff, saying, "Colonel, I've got Emma Emmerich and we're on our way back to the Shell 1 computer room." "Good. And what about the president?" That was the issue. He could hear his superior officer sigh in response, but he would have none of it. "Don't sit there and pretend that this is some kind of catastrophe," he said, "since none of the Sons of Liberty that I've run into today thought the president was critical, and he gave them the codes they needed for the launch sequence anyway." "What are you saying, Raiden?" "I'm saying the president of the United States basically betrayed this country," he said with a bit of a scowl. "It doesn't matter at this point. Arsenal is almost ready for launch, and we need to get to the server room to try and stop it by taking out the AI running it called GW. Over the phone, there was silence. Given that he had just informed them of the president's death, it was to be expected. He had also done so in the most callous, aloof manner imaginable, but in light of what he was learning today, it was becoming difficult to feel anything for a puppet leader. Eventually, though, he did receive a response on the other end of the line, from his girlfriend, of all people, who was obviously listening in. Rosemary explained the silence and the absence by asking, "Jack, what you said about the president, is it true?" Since the person who told him, Naruto, had no reason to lie, and he appeared a little embarrassed to tell him, it was reasonable to assume that all the other information was accurate. Naruto and Snake had spent the entire day covering his behind. "Yeah, it's pretty heavy, isn't it?" Gave them the benefit of the doubt for the most part. "Why is this happening? Why are you on this mission of all people? And why today?" He was ignorant of the response to that. Why had only he been sent in? Someone more capable had to be there to finish the task. What did they anticipate from him? To persevere and rescue the day akin to a mythical hero. Much like Big Boss, similar to Solid Snake, Snake had assistants as well. If Naruto's actions today were any indication of his past deeds, it would be of greater assistance than anyone could ever know. Raiden said, momentarily putting down his gun, "I don't know. I wish I could tell you, but I just can't. Jack, do you remember what day tomorrow is?" He tried to joke, but even in jest, that wasn't guaranteed at all, so it fell flat. "Still number. Sorry Rose. Right now I just hope I'll stay alive until then so you can tell me and make me feel like an idiot." "Be careful, I'll try." At that point, the discussion came to an end. He was pretty sure Catherine had stayed on and eavesdropped. It didn't bother him. "I'm done with the conversation now," he said, confident that Emma had been listening to him even if they hadn't been connected by codec. They would have tried to track her right away, saying, "Didn't mean to eavesdrop on you and your girlfriend. Sorry, I didn't know you were calling anyone until I heard the static. If I'd cut out your side would have known that I was locked into your frequency." "It must be nice," Emma replied, peering down from the board. "I used to think that I had someone that cared about me like that. But Hal just ran out on me after my stepfather died during an incident. He never called or anything when my mother moved us back to England. Otakon really did care, but he just didn't know how to face you or your mother after. Well, I'm sure you know." "You know." Emma didn't seem to be comforted in the slightest by Catherine's apparent knowledge of their dysfunctional family background. "Just a little. After 2 years there's only so much to talk about without glossing over personal stuff at some point, you know. He knows stuff about me that he probably shouldn't know if it makes you feel any better." "It really doesn't." With a sigh, Raiden held his temple and said, "Stop arguing. Please," making a last-ditch effort to get the two young ladies to keep quiet. Could that board move a little bit more quickly without one of them falling off? All in all, he would much sooner take on Vamp once more than put up with two girls fighting. However, Vamp had passed away. That was settled when he threw him into water that had been purified so that no one could swim to the surface before he discovered Emma. Shell 1 Core. Server Room, 2nd Basement. Naruto found his fellow philanthropy member Hal, Otakon, Emmerich sitting at the main chair of the supercomputer that was purported to be the heart of the big shell. "What do you mean you ran into Meryl?" Naruto asked. "And where the fuck is Snake? He's not answering his radio." Otakon adjusted his glasses on his face and said, "With Meryl. He appeared to be rushing through whatever he could hack into to try and help them until Emma arrived." "Aren't you listening? Or did the cyborg ninja beat you punch drunk?" Was the tense little thing he had to do to hide how uncomfortable he was seeing her in person again after all this time. "You know I can make you cry in front of your stepsister and Sniper Wolf, right?" The nearby caged parrot growled loudly, bothering Naruto so much that he would give into its stress and let it cry. "I will eat you." Naruto had not eaten since leaving that morning, so there was a possibility he would have done so. To help ease Naruto's own bottled-up feelings, Otakon said, "Please don't. The last thing I want to do after seeing her for the first time in years is explain why one of my teammates is eating her pet. Where's the cyborg ninja, anyway? I think that belongs to Yi anyway." Naruto had told him who the mysterious ninja was, so he already knew. His team needed to know that the ninja was essentially on their side in order for the next part of their plan to succeed. "She says he's got to be the one to finish Solidus or her baby." Naruto snapped his jaw as he spoke, getting ready to get Raiden aboard Arsenal gear. He then pointed by dragging his thumb across his neck. With an understanding grimace, Otacon said, "I don't get it though. What's the point? Even though it would be a challenging battle, he or Snake could probably defeat Solidus and be done with it. Olga's powered suit and her own abilities probably gave her a good chance of killing him herself. Why did they need to take such a detour to arrive at the desired outcome?" Otacon turned to face Naruto and said, "I don't either. But how are you getting in?" Johnny hadn't been blowing smoke. Naruto grinned and held up a keycard that he'd received from a reliable friend on the other side of the fence way earlier in the day. "I've got clearance. Trust me, I already checked, and this opens the elevator down. I'm fine." He meant it when he said that his keycard opened everything, saying, "The base is pretty much empty, so you've got to get the hostages out of here pretty soon." He was already aware of this. When the time came, he had to pilot the helicopter that would take the hostages that the Sons of Liberty had taken earlier in the day. This was getting close to the wire, and once Arsenal gear removed the facade, the big shell would most likely be destroyed along with whoever was inside at the time. When the two fell silent for a moment, Naruto peered through the server room's glass and noticed that there was not a single movement in the area. Naruto returned to his original question, "Where the fuck is Snake?" As the area around him squawked again, this time in a screechy manner, "Shut up," because the place appeared to be deserted. In the interim, inside Arsenal gear. "This is such a bad idea," Johnny muttered under his breath, but no one inside could hear him over the long elevator that descended far below Big Shell. Meryl and Johnny, wearing balaclavas, stood inside the windowless transport, with a closed cardboard box between them and a slot open for someone to see out of. "We're going to get shot the second these doors open up," Johnny said to himself. Meryl defended in turn, saying, "Unless it's Solidus or Ocelot themselves, no one else is going to care." Then she turned to their third, dressed as the now extinct Fallschirmjäger of the late dead cell member Old Boy, and asked, "How are you feeling, Snake?" Behind the mask the uniform provided, Snake uttered, "Safe and sound. You guys can carry me until we get somewhere where I can pop out right." Meryl bragged, "I can carry at least two of you if I had to." "I can't believe you're still using the box trick," she replied, flashing her suit-clad bicep. "I'm not the same untrained rookie you met at Shadow Moses, Snake. The mission's success is contingent upon your utilization of your cardboard box." Snake declared emphatically, "I'll cease using it when it breaks. When it stops working you'll get shot. Good incentive to stop using it then, isn't it?" He thought it was a pretty good gambit to get into Arsenal gear. Snake inquired, "How far down is this thing?" Since the ride had taken much longer than he had anticipated and he was beginning to feel restless. It was probably not helping any of this at all that he was balled up in a box. In an attempt to partially address his query, Meryl said, "What do you think Big Shell's foundations are built down around and on top of?" "It's a long way down. As in on the sea floor." "Jesus," Snake murmured, "whatever happened to the old days when the next big machine of mass destruction or domination was stored in a heavily guarded, high-security hangar? What was wrong with those days?" Before addressing another topic, Johnny said, "You know, I thought you were a scary guy after Shadow Moses. You're really not that scary when there's no chance of you pointing a gun at me and blowing my brains out." "People kept blowing them up," Johnny said. A stale voice said, "I could do that if you want." Snake said, No thanks, I'm fine." Meryl inhaled deeply as the elevator clattered to a halt and turned to face Snake. "Keep your mouth shut no matter what," she said. Snake deadpanned, as if she didn't know he knew the drill. "Thanks for the vote of confidence. Just don't drop me." "Ow," he mumbled in complaint when Meryl kicked the box before he could retrieve it. "I'll give you your money back for that." When the doors opened and they were greeted by sleekly armored Arsenal Tengu commandos pointing P90s at them as they stepped off, Meryl grunted and said, "Uh-huh." She didn't believe him at all. "Down, boys." The soldiers in special suits turned to face Meryl and saluted her quickly. One of them said, "Ma'am, if you'll head to your quarters now, there's a Tengu suit awaiting you." The fiery redhead gave a nod and continued on, but Johnny lingered for a little while longer to talk to the person who had just told Meryl, "Where's mine? Will I be getting a suit?" The Tengu guard declared bluntly, "We're out." "What?" Without a doubt, Johnny shot back, "Why the hell don't I get a suit, but everyone else down here does?" With indignation, "It isn't equitable. I'm afraid to stand in front of you when you're just holding an AN-94, the Tengu said, holding up his P90 and displaying his sidearm HF blade that he also carried. Because these suits are dangerous, the equipment we use is dangerous. You're not going to get a sword in AP90. Accept it. Indeed, once you've been in a deadly firefight and your safety is turned on, nobody will ever let you forget it. Moreover, when his gun misfired due to his accidental sneeze during their time stationed in the Kuril Islands, at least that particular instance only resulted in him shooting himself. Damn it, just like the rest of you, I've made it through every minute of this hellstorm of a mission, and just as it's about to end, I can't even get a suit that will allow me to block bullets with a sword that can cut through anything. You guys get brand spanking new P90s and I'm stuck with the same shitty old rifle I've been using for the last 2 years. Johnny cried, starting to lose his cool. Basically, the Tengu uttered, hiding his emotions behind his helmet, "What will you do about it?" Johnny paused at that point and said, "Miss Olga, I'm telling you." She was the one that told us specifically not to let you use the ultra-dangerous suits and weapons. Oh no. As Johnny trampled off after Meryl, he yelled. If nothing else, his little tantrum gave her permission to walk past the guards with the random box she was carrying without even a sidelong glance. Those things were badass, and he still wanted his damn Tengu suit. I wanted to move like boss. By now Raiden had reached the server room in Shell 1 with Emma following him, and the stepsister-stepbrother team of Emma and Hal Emmerich were hard at work installing an apparent super virus straight into GW's system while Naruto's platform board had flown off safely at Catherine's command, its task completed. Emma's fingers were tapping furiously on the keyboard, then she pushed her chair over so she could work on another one. Otakon, who was presumably just watching, felt completely out of place, and not even a shove to clear his throat would get her attention. Emma gave him a quick glance and a curt, "How?" when he entered the room, but then Naruto took out the disc he had given him and she began working. Raiden finally said, after he and Naruto had been standing aside and out of the way for the previous 20 minutes, "This is really hard to watch." "I am aware. Isn't it boring as hell?" "No," Raiden urged, hoping he could furrow his brow without appearing foolish. "Your friend seems like he wants to talk to her, but just take a look at him." Naruto acknowledged his friend's bad luck and remarked, "Yeah, he's not really good with women. I mean, I can see why after what I heard about his stepmother and all of that. He had a huge crush on Sniper Wolf, so I used to tease him about it, but he... With what I now know, it hurts to take a step back and truly pay attention." The only reason Naruto's social problems were able to be resolved so quickly was because Wolf had taught him how to be more confident around girls. In addition, the majority of the women he had contact with were capable of killing him, which made it even easier for him to understand his place in social situations. Otakon wasn't at fault, he was just an awkward guy who was made that way by a past trauma. The fact that the daughter of that trauma, whom he loved dearly, was seated next to him only made matters worse. Squawk. The sound of Emma's parrot going off made Raiden and Naruto cringe, and then Naruto went off at it once more, saying, "I'm gonna throw that fucking thing into the water if I have to hear that one more time." Emma turned long enough to give Naruto a hard look and said, "Seriously, don't touch my bird." She didn't really intimidate him, but it was probably best to keep her cool and say, "He's not hurting you," while they were trying to sabotage an all-encompassing AI that was going to censor all information in the world if it got going. "And she's officially said more words to me and made eye contact with me longer than she has with you," Naruto answered, drawing Otakon's attention to move over to him so they could whisper while Emma was still entering code. "He's hurting my damn ears. Make it right." In conclusion, he hissed. How? Socially awkward in everyday settings, Otakon was genuinely unsure of how to resolve a problem that had been building between him and his stepsister for 12 years. "Sorry to have left, or say something. I am not sure. She's not my stepsister. She's yours. I only know how mine functions, at best, most of the time. If it was you, you wouldn't apologize." Otakon yelled in a hushed whisper, gesturing to Naruto's face. "You never apologize to anyone, not even to Catherine, even when you know you're wrong." That was irrelevant, as Naruto had no counter-argument, saying, "That's not the point. You really do apologize, so proceed. She simply wants to hear you say it and mean it, regardless of whether you believe what you did was correct." "You want me to tell her lies, then?" Emma said, taking off her glasses for a moment to wipe her eyes before returning to work. "I can hear everything you two idiots are saying." She then added, "This floor has a really good echo." Suddenly, she heard some indication noises from the keyboard, and her jaw dropped. No, no, no. By 90%, what do you mean? What is the issue? Raiden asked as he walked over to her, apparently being the only person that she was on relatively decent terms with. What happened to the virus? Emma said, putting her head in her arms and sounding disenfranchised. The worm cluster didn't finish uploading. I should have known better than to trust one that I didn't make myself for something this big. So it wasn't successful? Naruto asked rhetorically. Emma's reaction was enough of an indicator that whatever was supposed to have happened didn't work. Fine. Fuck it, it seems like we're reliving the classics here, complete with explosions and gunfire. Taking that as a sign, Raiden got up from the desk next to Emma and followed Naruto into the corridor, where they headed for the elevator that appeared to be closed all the time. Naruto took out his HF blade and said, "Take the elevator down into Arsenal Gear and kick everyone's ass until we get to Solidus. Then I'm gonna cut his head off." What? Raiden said in disbelief. That couldn't possibly be legitimate. He had to be joking. That's your plan. What a bad plan that is. That's the worst plan I've ever heard of, I believe I can say with confidence. It's not really that good, is it? Naruto asked, pausing just in front of the elevator door before turning to face Raiden inquiringly. Naruto simultaneously questioned and acknowledged, you're right. Okay, what if we... Oh my god, Kami, what on earth is that? Raiden screamed in agony as he was electrocuted from behind and fell into a sweet unconsciousness just as he turned to face the cyborg ninja. I could have done that myself and you wouldn't have had to deal with the whole him not trusting you thing. Once he woke up again, Olga's face appeared through the visor of her helmet as she watched Raiden fall to the ground. She was a little irritated that he'd purposefully interrupted her stealthy attack just to land a cheap shot of his own. As she began removing her ninja gear so she could return to her BDUs, she said, "How in the world are you able to hit him while I can't?" Naruto said as he checked to make sure that Raiden hadn't really hurt himself, only to stop when he saw the Russian femme fatale in her black bra and panties. He'd never seen her that undressed before, and that was one good-looking mother of a child, and this is the woman that had a baby. Olga complained, not bothering to tell Naruto to look away. "I'd better be in peak condition after all the work I did." He wouldn't have done it anyhow. She knew, and I had to train right afterwards for this mission and to kill you while still doing operations with my mercenaries. Lifting his fist to punch himself should the situation warrant it, Naruto tried to talk sense into his own head. She just tried to kill you 45 minutes ago. Stop looking at her ass before she tries to do it again. Olga made a crude remark, pervert. Rather than respond, Naruto pointed his index and middle fingers at her and repeatedly pretended to shoot her, complete with muffled sound effects. "You wish you had the heart to shoot me." As Olga began putting on her fatigues, Naruto thought dryly, "It's not shooting that I want to do to you." This meant that the gawk at the sexy young woman portion of the evening was over, and it was time to get back to business. "All right, I believe you to be the final straggler. They will therefore take off as soon as you get down there. Till you can direct them away from the door, Mr. Deadweight and I will hide here." "Are you positive that you can accomplish this?" He would be hiding in plain sight, and she was curious as to what made him think it would be that easy. The amount of things that could go wrong in such a short window of time would have made a more reasonable man back down. She sounded a little concerned, even though she'd already given her approval for their upcoming approach. But that was the way he had always been. Consider it this way. That was going to be one angry man when he woke up again. "Hell, shoot me for real if you have to," Naruto said as he scooped Raiden underneath one arm to walk into the elevator. "If I can't, you can try to kill me again to cover your own tracks, and you can keep a closer eye on Raiden when I drop him to run." That didn't give her much comfort, though, as she trailed him into the elevator and got ready to go beneath Arsenal Gear, the beast. Shell 1 Helicopad Strut E. The hostages had been ruthlessly abandoned in the meeting hall, where they remained cuffed, blindfolded, and mute, just as they had been on Raiden's previous mission to find the president's location. There wasn't much more that could have been done to keep Big Shell standing when Arsenal Gear took off. It's funny how a little thing like a razor-sharp kunai can fix a problem that big so quickly. That's what Otakon used to quickly cut all of the zip ties and free the unfortunate bystanders to the Sons of Liberty's revolution. Despite everything, they made their way to the helicopter in a systematic manner and got into the cargo hold of the Kosatka transport to be taken away by air. As he turned on the vehicle's lights and turned on the engines to warm them up, Otakon sighed and rubbed his eyes behind his glasses. It had been a long day, and night had finally fallen. His role as a direct participant in the whole thing was almost over, though he would still be supporting, as there was no one tech related to help Snake or Naruto anymore. To put it mildly, neither of them was especially technologically adept. Although Snake had an IQ of 180, he was particularly dense in that environment, so Naruto was clearly superior to Snake because at least he could use simple computer functions to get what he wanted. But it was past that point now. He had a long list of things he wanted to tell Emma, about being careful what kind of work she got into and all the associated risks, but he didn't want to start a fight, so Emma sat down next to him, still trying not to talk to him, still trying not to look at him, not to acknowledge his presence. Why did he do things like this so poorly? All right, it will only be a few minutes before we return to Manhattan. As he turned a few more switches, Otacon remarked, at least now these people can move past this nightmare. Emma scowled off to the side, causing Otacon to go silent once more. She was being harsh and she knew it. This wasn't the way to make him see her as an adult. Even though she felt wronged, she had to try and be a bigger person. Look, Hal. She stopped when she noticed something strange approaching them. Oh my god. As Vamp reached the edge of the heliport, it appeared as though he had run up to that level from the walls. He then slowly withdrew a rather large knife and charged straight towards the helicopter. I believed Raiden had killed him. It wasn't exactly a quick process, and Vamp's straight-line speed at a full sprint was more than fast enough to reach them before they ascended, but Otacon said, foregoing the precautions and trying to get the chopper off the ground as fast as he could. Grabbing Otacon by the throat, he latched onto the pilot side of the car and punched straight through the window, saying, sorry, but if harming you is what it takes to force Rapture and Solid Snake to back down, or to get to the Raiden boy, you have to suffer. Though Emma wasn't a pilot, she knew how to prevent them from dying in a mishap, so she steadied the controls as best she could as Vamp's grip felt like it was breaking Otacon's neck as he let go of the controls. Hal. The pressure on Otacon's head caused his blood vessels to dilate, causing his eyes to go bloodshot. However, Vamp's hold quickly gave way when a bullet went through the side of Otacon's head, causing it to violently jerk to the right, and he fell to the ground without moving. Since she was already on the helipad, the sound of the shot was muffled by the helicopter blades, and the world's best sniper could have made the same shot while wearing a blindfold. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Wolf muttered to herself as she approached the downed Vamp, carrying her dependable rifle, which was still hot to the touch at the barrel. I guess it paid to remain behind instead of going down into Arsenal, she said as she approached the helicopter and noticed Otacon gasping in the front seat in an attempt to catch his breath. Hello Dr. Emmerich, she said. It has been a long time. Emma at the time had been making sure that Otacon was safely getting his air back after nearly getting it squeezed out of him by a super strong Dead Cell member. When she saw Sniper Wolf however, she jumped back onto her side of the chopper and looked ready to jump out and run away. Ah. You were the one. At first, Wolf appeared perplexed, but then she realized that Emma likely still considered her to be one of the prominent Sons of Liberty members. No, Wolf said. Relax, I do not support them. After coughing a few more times, Otacon eventually realized who had saved his life with a perfectly placed sniper's bullet. Wolf. He had been informed that she was alive, but seeing her again in person really affected him physically. It's good to see you. In particular right now, I'm relieved you're okay. With a hint of a roguish laugh, Wolf added, likewise, Dr. Emmerich. Though you probably wouldn't be alright if I had been a few seconds slower in meeting up with you. Otacon sounded relieved. So you're not on their side. This was especially important because the last time they had met, she had supported Liquid's rebellion and had been used as a pawn in the capture of all the Metal Gear Rex scientists by her and the rest of Foxhound. I'm with Olga, and I'm for my little Proby, she stated, seeming to enjoy confusing the Emmerich couple. I'm not technically with you either. The only reason I'm here is because of Olga, and the only reason I chose to cover your sister is because of Naruto. With all these people, you have no one to watch out for them in case. Be careful. When Vamp appeared out of nowhere, like in an old Dracula film, Wolf hardly bothered to turn around and aimed her rifle at him, barely giving him time to get his feet fully under him before another bullet went straight through his head, this time through the front, dropping him back down onto the chilly helipad with a thud. The sniper gave Vamp a curious glance, shook her head, flipped her long hair, turned back to the chopper, chambered another round in her bolt-action rifle, and gave Vamp another blow to the head just to be safe. Wolf said, as I was saying, and then the entire facility started to shake violently. That was their cue to leave, saying, I do not wish to remain here for obvious reasons. Wolf then continued, I will ride with you and yours back to land. Yes, indeed. Wolf gave him a stunning smile that nearly melted his legs before she stopped and turned around to shoot Vamp in the head once more. This time, he hadn't even twitched to warrant her wrath. Come on, we only have a few seconds, I'd wager, before this place comes down, Otacon said, frantically opening the door to let Wolf in. Before he could try to stand up again, Wolf said, double tap. She wasn't sure if shooting him in the head twice would kill him, and she didn't really have anything on her person that would kill someone who survived that. Speaking of which, wait. She shot him once more for good measure before closing the door. Okay, take off. Before Big Shell could start to fall into the water, Otacon took a deep breath at the thought of how vicious Wolf could be in combat and followed her orders before the massive facility collapsed into the sea, sending all of the hostages, who had not yet completely closed the cargo door, scurrying in fear and horror. Sniper Wolf was ignoring all of that, focusing intently on the last task at hand before everything submerged beneath the waves. Would this mean that Vamp had now been killed 3 times today, or a higher number? The first time came from the ricochet caused by Lady Luck striking him in the head and torso, and the second time came from his battle with Raiden in the flooded area of Shell 2. Or was each time Wolf shot him meant to be considered a separate death, since if that was the case, he would have gone over the maximum number of deaths in a day. It was more of a trivial matter than anything else because there was no limit to how many times he could die. Okay, Vamp said, lying flat on his back on the helipad and bleeding out onto the ground from the 3 holes in his head that appeared to be healing already. That is really annoying, he said, sounding almost bored, opening his eyes just in time to hear a gunshot and have his lights turned off again at the command of a well-aimed sniper's bullet. 20 miles offshore from Manhattan, he would be floating aimlessly when he awoke the next morning after being killed. Armada gear, Jejunum level onboard. Jack responds to me. What's wrong, Jack? Raiden was startled out of his extremely uncomfortable state of unconsciousness by the sound of Rosemary in his codec. He found himself lying on a cold, metal floor and thought, why was there static in his system? Rolling onto his belly, Raiden pushed himself up while holding his head and replied to his girlfriend, I'm fine, Rose. He stopped when he realized what had happened and seemed to see the offender nearby. He charged Naruto, who was facing away and appeared to be searching for something, with such force that he broke out into a sprint. The white-haired soldier choked the blonde man until he cracked his neck, causing him to go limp and disappear in a cloud of smoke. Hey, it hurt like hell. Raiden turned to face the catwalk they appeared to be on and saw another very irate Naruto carefully clutching his neck, asking, "Wha? Was Naruto stoned when he first appeared? He was watching over you while I went to investigate this area." "What the devil, dude?" Naruto said indignantly at the misfortune of his poor clone and his untimely demise. "Fuck, that hurt. You made me unconscious. It was necessary." Why? Naruto really didn't have a good reason for shocking Raiden to sleep, so he stopped talking when he reached a dead end. "I don't think it matters why, because no matter what I say you're still going to try to shoot at me," Naruto said, closing his mouth. With his fingers twitching toward the pistol he was carrying, Raiden said, "I'm really thinking about it. But you didn't kill me, and I'm not captured, and we're inside Arsenal gear, and I don't have time to fight you right now." He began to take in his surroundings at that point and realized he was a little taken aback. They were in an enormous room, which defied description. It was positively gigantic. Along the walls were more than 20 Metal Gear Ray models in holding, ready to go into action if necessary. What a sight to wake up to, Raiden thought to himself, good God. He wasn't sure if he had enough explosives to plant on those things to take down even half of them, so he wasn't sure what to do about it all. "There aren't any sentries in here because these rays aren't supposed to be run by people," Naruto muttered, peering over the catwalk railing below. "I still can't find Snake and he isn't answering." He laughed sarcastically. "They're unmanned, if you can believe that. Kind of scary, huh? They turned this ship into the ultimate mobile fortress and served as Arsenal Gear's main defense force." "Rose, I need to talk to the Colonel," Raiden said, slowly extending his hand to his ear. "Jack, he's indisposed right now." What? At this point in time? During a mission, during a heated moment like this? After he'd been down and out for a while? Seeing the change in Raiden's expression from whatever he'd been told, Naruto said with a dour look on his face, "Kitty found something out that you might not like if you're checking in with your upper brass. She said there's a frequency to your girlfriend, but there isn't a second one to this colonel of yours, and I don't think you've been speaking to them on the same line." He hadn't been. Talking to Colonel and Rose on different frequencies had been protocol, after all, and they were assigned to different positions within the mission headquarters, wasn't that right? What do you mean to tell me? With guarded curiosity, Raiden said to Naruto, I'm not following you. Naruto asked another question, shaking his head, you have nanomachines, don't you? That explains it. Raiden nodded, not sure where this was going. These silly things are quite capable. While some of those things are beneficial, I know who gave you yours because you serve in the US military, and those things have just as much negative effects on you as positive ones. It's not true that your colonel exists. Is that even conceivable? After a brief period of silence, Naruto appeared to receive the response over his personal codec link with Catherine. These are a newer model than the ones they were trying to test when I was in Foxhound. Have you ever wondered why it was so simple to perform all of the computer-related tasks you could, such as breaking into terminals and obtaining your big shell map layouts? The nanomachines are also present in your brain. Your COO is a delusional state. I got orders from him. Since the beginning of the mission, Raiden had been listening to a real person, so he wasn't going to accept that. Everything that had happened couldn't have been so clear-cut. Are you familiar with your colonel's face? No. Have you ever encountered someone who has personally seen the colonel? Raiden opened his mouth to respond, but this time he was at a loss for words. Having no solid defense, Raiden realized Rosemary had listened through the whole thing and had not once raised her voice. Rose. Please tell me something, please. Tell the truth to me. Don't lie to me, please. Quote. Are you and the colonel in the same building? No. During the staff briefing, you ought to have gotten in touch with him if you were supporting this mission. Do you know where the colonel is? No. Is the colonel still alive? No, Jack, he doesn't. Raiden felt sick, sinking with a clang against the catwalk railing before collapsing onto the ground and holding his head while muttering, things like that aren't possible. Yeah, they are, Naruto said with a hollow look in his eyes and a smile that stopped short of his lips. Every day, he tapped himself on the temple with a finger. The American patriots. There's never enough. This country is theirs, and it's never enough. That they control everything is unknown to everyone but a small group of government employees who merely comply. It is insufficient. I have no idea why they chose you for this mission, but that is what I think. These patriots again. It was difficult to understand. I keep hearing this, the speaker said. From oneself. From Emma. From the snake. From Otacon. From Vamp. What the devil is this, exactly? With his hands clasped behind his neck, Naruto turned to face Raiden and said, I don't know. Would it make you feel any better to hear that I've been dealing with this for the past 5 or 6 years and I still don't know who these people are, what they want, how they got to where they are, or anything like that? They took something more precious than anything from someone I care about, just to get their cooperation. Raiden shook his head, not looking up from where he sat. Not just you, but everyone is subjected to this. All of this is a game, or something. The largest chess game in the world. And when their tactics offended someone, they seemed to switch up the opponents every few years. Liquid Snake was one, Solidus Snake was the other, and they never knew who might have existed before then. This isn't a delusion. In an attempt to console the person who had voices in their head, Naruto said, you're not crazy. Your colonel is more like an AI or something. The nanos are still machines. In other words, it was speaking to you and giving you the information the Patriots wanted you to know. Don't worry about it. Your girlfriend might hear it too. Rosemary gasped over the phone, but Raiden ignored it because he wasn't in the mood to work things out with her just now. I don't want to talk about her right now. You know a lot about this. Naruto looked up at the ceiling high above their heads and said, I think I was 16 or 17 when they got me way back, about 6 years ago. After I was injured on the battlefield in Iraq, they took me away so they could experiment on me. What? Why? I assume you've seen some of my abilities. And there were other reasons too, Naruto said, gesturing to a Rasengan with one hand. The clones, the sticking to stuff, the electricity, this. Before something happened and I left, I don't think they learned the worst thing about me. You know, I still get nightmares. From the way he ended it, it was obvious that he didn't want to discuss it, and Raiden understood what he was trying to say. I know. More than you can imagine, I know. Tell me, hearing about someone else's never-ending nightmares made him consider his own, which he did everything in his power to ignore. I don't want to bring it up. They are dreadful entities. You are free to tell me, it is your matter. To get Raiden's attention once more, Naruto said, Just don't be mad at your girl for lying to you or not telling you, or whatever you want to call it. That's what they do. People are taken and used by them. Whatever means necessary to achieve their goals. She had no choice because she is incapable of fighting. Since they are the government, she had no one to turn to in any case. That gave Raiden something to ponder, if nothing else. On the ground level of the Ray hangar, Naruto heard the echo of a door sliding open, but he had other thoughts. Leaning over the edge of their catwalk, he looked down and saw a very large railgun enter first. The extremely menacing weapon was followed by a fair-skinned woman with blonde hair and a dejected expression that seemed permanently etched on her face as she surveyed the room. Fortune was the lone survivor of the Dead Cell group, the others had all fallen victim to various circumstances during the day. It was something she was searching for, and she was pretty sure it was there. She whispered to herself, "Everyone but me. You just keep taking and taking, don't you? You have no idea when to give up, do you?" Even though she didn't see anyone in the room, she charged her railgun and pointed it up at the rafters, saying, "2 years ago you took my father." She then fired a shot strong enough to destroy a whole section of the catwalk, sending it crashing down to the floor dozens of feet below, saying, "You took my husband." She then fired another shot at another section with the same outcome, saying, "My happy life. My whole household. My whole group. I'm the last one standing, one by one." Her railgun blasts punctuated each of these things, destroying whatever it was she was aiming at. Though she had no proof that Naruto was there, she seemed quite certain that he was, even though both Raiden and Naruto dreaded having to show themselves with that wicked weapon waiting for them. That didn't stop her from destroying everything in the deep sea dock earlier that day, though. And it wouldn't stop her here either, as she would shoot down every single place they had to hide until she found them, hit them, or found nothing. After another blast destroyed another catwalk, Naruto finally said, "Raiden, you should leave. She wants me. She is uninterested in this Sons of Liberty mission, are you?" "What? Not at all." In response, Raiden said, "Are you crazy? There's no battling her. She is not hit by bullets. Tried avoiding the use of bullets. Even if you manage to approach, the discharge from that rail gun will kill you because it will destroy you before you even get close. I can definitely move quickly enough to get close, to start with. Secondly, you think that because I tamper with electricity, I'm concerned about a gun going off. Lightning struck a goddamn Harrier 4 hours ago. It was all he could do to face her. I'm just glad we got this far before all hell broke loose. If she didn't shoot down the upper levels until they did something or got caught. Proceed now." Naruto managed to pull himself over the edge of their catwalk and dive straight down, falling at least 60 feet before flipping through and safely landing in a crouch on the ground before Raiden could stop him. Fortune's gaze was fixed on him, and upon raising his head, all he could discern was utter contempt and animosity. Naruto nodded and said, "Nice to finally meet you, Colonel Jackson's wife." She was the wife of the one commanding officer he had ever really respected, and it was a damn shame that it was going to have to come to this. Fortune fired at him, missing, destroying the floor where he was standing with her gun's extremely fast projectile before he could say anything more. "Don't you dare say his name after what you've done." It seemed like this fight was going to be one of those ones. When he managed to dodge the first of the devastating railgun shots that were certain to come his way, Naruto muttered to himself, "I don't have time for this." Returning to one of the few surviving catwalks, Raiden silently wiped a bead of nervous sweat from his brow, thinking to himself, this is not good. Did he stay, or did he leave? If he did leave, what was he to do with all that he had been told? Now what?
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.